Chapter 356. Miracle commerce had grown by leaps and bounds in just half a year, but it was limited by Southern Xia's environment, so it could not continue growing. Therefore, it needed to find a new environment to break through. Southern Xia's current situation was not good. It was very weak internally and was filled with dangers externally. There was a strong desire to develop new resources and find new hope, but it was not convenient to use the country's power. In this kind of situation, Southern Xia and Miracle Commerce could work together. As long as Southern Xia secretly supported the company in establishing themselves in the Forest of Chaos, the company could bring rich resources to Southern Xia in the future, allowing Southern Xia to establish a resource field in the Forest of Chaos and even have a place of their own. Even if they failed, at most Miracle Commerce would suffer a heavy blow and Southern Xia would be able to withdraw and not be caught up in it. What reason was there not to give it a try? The Southern Summer King issued 2 royal proclamations. The first was to urge the Cloud Dream Marquis Meng Qinggu to take up the position in Southern State as soon as possible. The Western Marquis of Southern State had already died in the Imperial City battle. After Meng Qinggu was bestowed the title of Cloud Dream Marquis, she became the trusted Marquis of Southern State, so it was natural for Meng Qinggu to manage Southern State. The second was that because the north was occupied by the spirit beasts, they could not take it back in a short amount of time. Southern Xia had not yet developed the south, but it still had the advantage of rich resources, so it would become the most important growth point for Southern Xia. Therefore, they used the power of the country to increase the development of the south. In order to ensure efficiency, the country guarding ruler personally led 200,000 elite soldiers to oversee it. Southern State was the southernmost region of Southern Xia and the closest place to the outer regions of the Forest of Chaos. Letting Meng Qinggu take up the position of Marquis in Southern State was actually making it more convenient for Miracle Commerce. After a few days, the members of Miracle Commerce set off together. This could be considered an unprecedented large relocation for Miracle Commerce. Chu Tian did not just take the core team from Central State, he also sent the resources and money stored by Miracle Commerce to the south. Other than that, Miracle Commerce also brought the army that Dongfang Gan had given them. An army of 200,000. All of them were storm cavalry. Dongfang Gan handed over the remaining elites of Southern Xia to Chu Tian to manage. The number 1 ruler of Southern Xia, the famous Chu Tian who destroyed 600,000 warhounds, personally led the Southern Xia elites to Southern State. As for Meng Qinggu, she was the chairman of Miracle Commerce and the Marquis of Southern State given to her by the Southern Summer King. She could lead the entire Southern State army and now no one could compare to their prestige in Southern Xia. Southern State City was not as rich as Central State City, but the people were swift and fierce and the people were all martial artists. It was common to see figures of other races. The South Continent Vice City Lord personally led the South Continent Army to welcome them. Greetings, Country Protector Emperor. Greetings Cloud Dream Marquis. When the soldiers kneeled on the ground, they all had a strange feeling in their hearts. Most of the people here had participated in the battle against Central State. They had fought several months ago, but who would have thought that in this short period of time, Chu Tian would become the Country Protector Emperor and Meng Qinggu would become the Marquis of Southern State. The entire Southern State had become the world of the two of them. Fate was always changing, it really made people sigh. After Miracle Commerce entered Southern State, the resources of the country continued to pour in, helping Miracle Commerce develop Southern State. Chu Tian used this chance to gather a large amount of precious materials to refine pills, wildly increasing Miracle Commerce's strength. Very quickly, Meng Yingying, Meng Qinggu, and the other illustrious Soul Realm cultivators all took several top-quality sacred pills and smoothly reached the true Soul Realm, reaching the 7th awakened soul layer. Of course Chu Tian would not mistreat himself. In just a short week, he had used several top-quality level 2 sacred pills and easily jumped a layer, reaching the 8th awakened soul layer. Actually with Miracle Commerce's current resources, Chu Tian had the ability to increase everyone's strength even more. However, Relying on pills to increase their strength in a short period of time would only increase their dependence on pills, which would be detrimental to their future growth. Therefore, Chu Tian decided to slow down. He used the remaining resources on Chen Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren, the two peak ninth awakened soul layer cultivators, building a foundation for them to break into the true spirit realm. The previous Southern Summer King's son, Dongfang Haoren, had already joined Miracle Commerce. Chu Tian had appointed him as the head of the Chu sect, managing Chu Tian's Chu sect. Dongfang Haoren's talent was not inferior to Chu Xinghe's. If he was properly trained, he would become an expert in the future. While large amounts of resources were being used to train high-level members, Miracle Commerce did not forget to develop low-level members. The resources consumed in this period of time was over 10 billion gold coins. This was not a small amount even for the three great clans of the past. There was no power in southern Xia that could consume this much resources in just a few days. Miracle Commerce consumed resources too quickly and large amounts of gold coins flowed into the people. Adding in the chaos from before, the prices in southern Xia were soaring and the price of a sacred herb was more than double what it was before. Chu Tian did not care about this at all. Gold coins were a low-level currency, it was useless once they left southern Xia. Didn't Chu Tian create Miracle Commerce to collect resources to cultivate and grow? He would spend money when he needed to. As for the damage Miracle Commerce would cause to southern Xia's economy, this was not something he considered at all. The most important task now was to build a space warehouse. Because southern state was very backward, the various infrastructures were very backward. Miracle Commerce needed to transport large amounts of resources, so shipping and air were too slow. If there was a space warehouse now, it would be much more convenient to transport resources. Especially after they entered the Forest of Chaos. Miracle Commerce's airships couldn't just randomly enter the Forest of Chaos. If they couldn't solve the problem of transporting resources, how could Miracle Commerce develop the Forest of Chaos? Chu Tian personally guided Vivian, Meng Qingguo, and Meng Yingying as they began the construction of the space warehouse. This was because the lowest level of spatial technology was level 3 source energy technology. True spirit realm experts with spatial abilities couldn't operate it. Currently, only Vivian could directly use it. Meng Qingguo and Meng Yingying had strong learning abilities, mainly learning the complex spatial knowledge. Of course, Meng Yingying's learning ability was weaker than Meng Qingguo's, but Meng Yingying's mirror source spirit could imitate other source spirits. There would be a day when Meng Yingying would become an important spatial technology researcher. Cheers erupted in the research room on this day. This is great, we've successfully marked the space. Vivian danced with joy. After using an entire 10 days, Vivian had finally placed a spatial spiritual imprint on a subspace. After this imprint was placed, they could choose to summon this subspace in the future. This would prevent the subspace from being randomly summoned each time. Vivian and Meng Yingying high-fived each other in celebration. Meng Qingguo was also filled with excitement, this progress was much faster than she had imagined. Actually, as long as they could do this, the space warehouse could be used. The subspace marking was successful and it was time to transform the space. Miracle Commerce used the level 3 source energy array to capture a subspace, but it was only around 1,000 cubic meters. Even if they were lucky, they could find a subspace that was around 2-3,000 cubic meters. Although it was large enough for normal storage equipment, for a warehouse, it was not enough. Not to mention, subspaces were often irregular. The subspace marked by the Yun sect was shaped like an irregular flat cake. It was very long and wide, but the highest part was less than 3 feet and the lowest part was less than 10 centimeters. How could this kind of space be used for storage? It would be very inconvenient to transport goods. This kind of naturally formed subspace was like this, so it was very important to reconstruct the space. Vivian was a spatial engineer for Miracle Commerce, locating and marking the subspace was a small matter. What really took effort was the process of transforming the subspace. Chu Tian said to Vivian, the space warehouse's shape must be regular, so your next task is to transform it. I hope to see a cube with a length, width, and height of 10 meters. Ah! Meng Yingying and Vivian had a bitter expression on their faces. Transforming a flat-shaped subspace into a cube was not an easy matter. Not only did Vivian need to do this, Meng Yingying and Meng Qingwu also needed to use the spatial knowledge and formulas they had just learned to do large amounts of calculations. This was definitely a large task. Does it have to be a cube? It has to be a cube. Chu Tian was not purposely making it hard for them. This spatial technology was a very complex technology. If they couldn't even make a level 3 space warehouse, how could they hope to develop a higher-grade spatial product in the future? Cubes, or spheres were all fine, but Chu Tian's requirements were a bit stricter. This was also to hone their spatial technology. Vivian was filled with fighting spirit. No problem, I'll definitely make it into a cube. Chu Tian nodded his head in satisfaction. Then let's first do a spatial transportation experiment. Everyone revealed a look of joy. Whether the space warehouse was good or not, it would all depend on the performance of this experiment. If the space warehouse was really that fast, then it would set off an unimaginable revolution on the continent. Chu Tian said to Meng Qingwu, inform the Central State Yun sect to send 1,000 submachine guns over. All right. Meng Qingwu immediately took out a portable communication device and immediately called the Central State Yun sect's number. Hello, is this old Zhang? Please bring 1,000 submachine guns to the spatial laboratory. We will be doing a spatial transportation experiment. Right, don't ask too much first. Meng Qingwu hung up the communication device. At this time, the Central State Yun sect immediately went to the Central State Warehouse and counted the 1,000 source energy submachine guns. Every 100 of them were placed in a box and finally 10 boxes were sent to the spatial laboratory. Open the source energy array. Central State's laboratory followed the method and opened up the marked space. Everyone placed the weapons chest by chest into the space, and at the same time, the entire city recorded the experimental data. Put all 10 boxes of guns into the space warehouse. The source energy array is stable, but the energy consumption has doubled. Record: after the space warehouse is filled with items, the space warehouse's energy consumption has increased. It is not clear if it is caused by mass or volume. After the Central State Yun sect's researchers finished collecting the data, they immediately closed the source energy array and used the communication device to contact Meng Qingwu. The goods have already been sent. Chu Tian waved his hand. Let's take the goods. Yes. Meng Yingying was filled with excitement as she pressed the button to open the space warehouse. Several energy columns released a dazzling light. Meng Qingwu could clearly feel that the energy consumption to open the space warehouse was several times more than the previous times. The energy columns quickly weakened at a shocking rate. When goods were loaded, the space warehouse's energy consumption would increase. Energy was very cheap in this era, so it wouldn't increase the cost by too much. However, it would restrict the quantity and quality of goods that could be transported. This could be considered a kind of restriction, but it was still acceptable. Vivian and Meng Yingying hurriedly took out 10 boxes. Every box was in good condition, without the slightest bit of damage. When the boxes were opened, 100 submachine guns were neatly stacked on top of each other. The entire transportation process did not even have the slightest bit of turbulence. Wow, perfect. Meng Yingying excitedly shouted, doesn't this mean that I can eat Central State's roasted chicken in Southern State at any time? Vivian's little face turned red, not to mention Central State's roasted chicken. When our elves build the space warehouse, I'll have the elders brew the best quality elven green tea for you every day. Even if it's sent to your room from several tens of thousands of miles away, it will still be freshly brewed and steaming hot. Meng Qingwu couldn't help smiling. These two girls only knew how to eat and drink. But the space warehouse's spatial transportation function did indeed have great prospects and potential. Chapter 357. Miracle Commerce conducted several tests and collected a large amount of data. The final conclusion was that the space warehouse was very stable, and other than not being able to store life objects and pure energy objects, there were no special restrictions. The space warehouse would not damage the items stored and even had the effect of preventing them from rotting. Other than that, maintaining the space warehouse required a large amount of energy, and the amount of energy consumed was closely related to what was stored in the warehouse. Empty warehouses consumed the least amount of energy, and the more items there were, the more energy it consumed. This was related to the volume, quality, and energy of the items stored. If the volume was too large, the quality was too high, or the energy was too strong, the energy consumption of the space warehouse would be very large. At that time, the 4 energy pillars would be squeezed dry before the space warehouse could be opened, causing the opening of the space warehouse to fail. Although energy wasn't valuable, building the energy pillars was quite troublesome. Therefore, in the process of opening the space warehouse, one had to carefully understand the situation of the warehouse to avoid unnecessary losses and troubles. Whether it was the space warehouse's structure or the space warehouse's encryption, the warehouse needed a large amount of time and energy to be perfected. This was not a small project, and to Miracle Commerce, who only had a single spatial engineer, it was not a small challenge. Vivian had no complaints about this and instead felt very honored. It was because the work was special and irreplaceable that she was filled with energy. The space warehouse was not only Vivian's first project, it was also a perfect work of art that was slowly being born in her hands. She wished she could use all her energy to make it perfect. Vivian worked overtime every day with Meng Qingguo and Meng Yingying helping out. The progress of the space warehouse was not fast, but it was being pushed forward bit by bit. Only, the number of times Chu Tian came to the space laboratory was becoming less and less. It was unknown what he was doing all day. Meng Qingguo asked around and found out that Chu Tian had brought Gu Qianqiu and a group of old men to do research on medicine. Meng Qingguo understood Chu Tian too well. This fellow wouldn't do anything unnecessary. Since it could produce such a strange medicine, then there must be a reason for it. What was so novel about this medicine? How could the general manager of Miracle Commerce not know what happened at Miracle Commerce? Meng Qingguo personally looked at the Yun sect's research records and was shocked to find that she had never heard of this medicine before. Large amounts of fierce beast blood and strange materials were used to refine something called the wild blood medicine. What use did this thing have? It was definitely not a medicine that could increase one's cultivation, nor did it have any healing or detoxifying effects. Meng Qingguo couldn't help but look for Chu Tian. She slapped the documents on the table. The space laboratory's progress has reached a critical point. It's fine if you don't go help, but now you're researching some strange thing. Aren't you going to give me an explanation? Explain? Why should I explain it to you? I am the boss of this Miracle Commerce. Look at you acting like a lady boss. Chu Tian calmly took a sip of tea. Before entering the forest of chaos, what do you think is the most urgent problem to solve? This question stunned Meng Qingguo. The company had a bunch of problems that needed to be solved, so she didn't know which one was the most important. Meng Qingguo countered with a question, then what do you think it is? We lack a strong army of our own. Actually, Miracle Commerce's technology is already very advanced in the modern era. Chu Tian said this before pausing, but Miracle Commerce lacks a synchronized military force. Perhaps it didn't feel anything in southern Xia, but once we enter a place like the Forest of Chaos, this problem will be fatal. Meng Qingguo said with knit brows, don't we have source energy weapons? Source energy weapons also need humans to control them. Chu Tian explained his intentions, so, I'm prepared to create an army. Miracle Commerce's underworld mercenary group had 30,000 people. Actually, the underworld mercenary group's original intention was to protect Miracle Commerce's various businesses. Miracle Commerce's businesses were too wide, so they needed a certain amount of troops to guard them. Once the mercenary group was scattered, there wouldn't be much left. The giant shark gang had 100,000 members and only around 10-20,000 elites, so they couldn't effectively protect Miracle Commerce. As for the 200,000 Southern Summer Cavalry in their hands, this was Southern Xia's hard work and it was a pretty good army, but it didn't belong to Miracle Commerce in the end. Not to mention the fact that cavalry couldn't be used in the Forest of Chaos. The Forest of Chaos was different from Southern Xia. The Forest of Chaos was a truly chaotic land. If one didn't have a strong enough influence, what could they do even if they brought good goods into the Forest of Chaos? Perhaps before the company could even start operating, everything would be stolen. Meng Qinggu was a little interested. Then what are you prepared to do? At this time, Chu Tian's communication device rang. Meng Qinggu was a little surprised. Only the core members knew Chu Tian's number, and if there wasn't a big matter, no one would call him. Everyone knew that Chu Tian was very lazy. If something happened, he would find Meng Qinggu. Nangong Yun's anxious voice came, Chu Tian, this is bad, we've been robbed by bandits. Where did these bandits come from that dared rob Miracle Commerce? Wasn't this just nonsense? Even the Southern Summer King didn't dare offend Miracle Commerce now. Chu Tian had a large army in his hands and was the #1 noble in the Southern Summer Country, so what was the difference between offending Miracle Commerce and committing suicide? Chu Tian did not say anything. Meng Qinggu quickly asked, Nangong, what are you saying? What is going on? I don't know either. It's just that a large group of barbarians ran out of the mountains and attacked our engineering team. Nangong Yun quickly explained, those barbarian commanders aren't weak, they've captured Big Sister Yun Yao and Big Sister Kaidai. Before Elder Sister Kaidai was captured, she contacted me. I heard that they suffered heavy losses, so quickly come and save them. Southern State was the most primitive and barbaric region of the 8 states. Most of the barbarians came from the south and were very strong, making people fear them. Moreover, they were not civilized at all and would often kidnap caravans from cities. When the Western Marquis managed Southern State, he used a strategy of absorbing and resisting. He recruited the barbarians to increase his army's strength while using the Southern State army to suppress the barbarians, maintaining a balance in front of them. After Miracle Commerce came to Southern State, Meng Qinggu understood the local situation. Although she knew that the barbarians were not small, she did not place them in her eyes. She never thought that. These damn fellows would not have eyes. If we don't eradicate the barbarians, Southern State's development will be hindered. Meng Qinggu stood up and said, we have 200,000 storm cavalry, why don't we use this chance to wipe out the barbarians? The 200,000 storm cavalry was a strong army that could fight against the Warhound's army. Southern Xia had spent countless resources and energy to raise them. These barbarians were the lowest of the low and each tribe only had a few thousand people, so they could not stop the storm cavalry's charge. Damn, they're simply going too far. Chu Tian angrily slapped the table, Nangong, bring 500 Griffin Knights first. Even if you have to go door to door, you have to investigate clearly for me which barbarian tribe ate a bear's heart and leopard's gall, daring to rob my Miracle Commerce. I'll gather the army and I'll be there soon. If we don't teach these barbarians a lesson today, they won't know who the owner of this land is. All right. Nangong Yun hung up the call. Chu Tian's anger had not disappeared. He turned to look to the side and found that the young miss was looking at him with a strange gaze. Chu Tian was scared by the young miss' gaze. Young miss, why are you looking at me like this? Our people have been robbed, aren't you worried at all? The young miss gave a cold laugh. Your acting is quite good, I was almost tricked by you. Chu Tian pretended to be surprised. Why does the young miss say this? If my guesses aren't wrong, Miracle Commerce has not been robbed at all. It was all a good show you directed yourself, right? Young miss, you need evidence to speak. I'm such a pure and honest person, how could I direct this kind of dirty trick? Meng Qinggu stared at him. If Miracle Commerce had really been robbed, it would be strange if you weren't angry. Would you still be sitting here calmly talking nonsense with me? Also, you had Nangong Yun go door to look for you. If someone was really captured and Nangong Yun found a hostage, it would be strange if they weren't dead. The little fox's divine eye could clearly find the target. Why didn't you use it? Why did you have to use this kind of stupid method? Other people didn't know about Chu Tian's background, but how could Meng Qinggu not know? Chu Tian's little fox was not just for show. That divine eye could be considered a divine investigative tool. As long as it locked onto a general area, the little fox could easily find this group of daring robbers. Nan Gongyun could have just brought the Griffin Knights over to save them. Why did he need to go through all this trouble? There was only one possibility. This was definitely a good show that Chu Tian directed himself. Chu Tian helplessly said, "The young miss is truly a beautiful and intelligent girl. I can't fool you at all." It's not that you can't fool me. It's that your acting is too bad. But this was also good. He could use this chance to show off his muscles in Southern State. He could let the barbarians and the Southern State nobles see who the true boss of this territory was. Miracle Commerce deliberately spread the news everywhere. Almost everyone in the city knew that Miracle Commerce had been attacked and that two important members of the management had been captured by the barbarians. This matter was spread all over the city and everyone knew about it. About 3 hours later, the army of 200,000 soldiers marched out in an orderly manner. Every 10,000 soldiers formed a brigade, and they were divided into 20 brigades in total. Chu Tian personally led this brigade and charged towards the area where the berserkers were densely packed. Meng Qinggu used her status as the Southern State Marquis to gather over 100,000 Southern State troops, following the storm cavalry. Just because they had been robbed by a group of barbarians, Miracle Commerce had mobilized an elite army of over 100,000 people. This was unprecedented in the history of Southern State. The Southern State nobles originally wanted to watch a joke, but when they saw the terrifying power in Miracle Commerce's hands, all of their faces turned pale. This was too terrifying. If anyone dared to provoke Miracle Commerce in the future, then they would be instantly crushed into nothing. It was impossible for the barbarians not to know about this army of over 100,000. The entire barbarian race exploded. All the tribe leaders gathered together in shock. Just which bastard dared to provoke a monster like Miracle Commerce? The barbarians were not completely ignorant of Miracle Commerce. After all, Miracle Commerce's influence was too great. Even the barbarians were proud to be able to use Miracle Commerce's electric lamp. Although they did not know how strong Miracle Commerce was, they would not provoke such a top power for no reason. Not good. This is the strongest storm cavalry of Southern Xia. Reporting to the chief, the humans have sent over 100,000 cavalry. We should quickly escape. Damn it. Which tribe did this? Do they not have fucking eyes? Quickly find them and hand them over to the humans. It's too late, too late. The human army has already surrounded us. They want to use this as an excuse to wipe us out in one fell swoop. The barbarians were like ants on a hot pan. This was simply a disaster for the barbarians. Chapter 358. Chu Tian's vast army moved out and the barbarians were completely scared silly. They could bully the Western Marquis, how could they dare provoke the country-guarding ruler who had such a large army? The Northern Warhounds had tens of millions of people, but the Southern State barbarians did not even have 1 million people. This small population was divided into several large and small tribes. The country-guarding ruler was not afraid of the Warhounds, so how could he be afraid of the Southern barbarians? So what if the barbarian warriors were strong and had thick skin? The Warhounds' army of 600,000 had been completely annihilated by Chu Tian. Actually, the barbarians were afraid of offending the country-guarding ruler and bringing about the extermination of their tribe, so when they learned that Chu Tian had come to Southern State, they began to restrain themselves. They began to prepare rations and prepared to leave the Southern State area. Although the barbarians were not smart, they were not fools. Who would want an uncontrollable power to appear in their territory? The Western Marquis had no way of dealing with them before, but the country-guarding ruler had the ability to eliminate them. If they waited for Chu Tian to make a move, it would be too late. Miracle Commerce could feel the barbarians restrain themselves and prepare to leave, so it was peaceful for half a month. Meng Qinggu did not plan on making a move against the barbarians. Who would have thought that at this moment, it was unknown which group of idiots would not be able to hold themselves back and go out to eat. It was fine if you said they were robbing a normal caravan. The barbarians were doing this in the dark, and it was fine as long as they did not go too far. Who would have thought that this group of idiots would attack the Miracle Commerce's communication team? It was fine if you said you robbed them, but you killed Miracle Commerce's employees and captured 2 of Miracle Commerce's high management members. Wasn't this seeking death? It's over this time, they're really dead. An old barbarian tribe leader quickly discussed countermeasures with his tribe members. An old barbarian covered in bone ornaments stood up and said, "This is just a fuse. The southern summer people will not tolerate the barbarians. Nothing happened today, but something will happen tomorrow. The humans will destroy us sooner or later. Even if they don't make a move, we won't dare rob them. Without a source of income, we will starve to death. That's right. We can't stay in southern Xia any longer. We have to run." The barbarians did not know how to farm and manage. Each of them was rude and barbaric. The human race disdained to associate with them, so they could only rely on robbing for a living. Now that Nanzhou's living environment was rapidly deteriorating, no one dared to rob the barbarians anymore, so how could they guarantee their future lives? The barbarians had lived in the southern province for many years and had a deep conflict with the people of the southern province. From the perspective of human interests, they would not allow a foreign force that could threaten them to reproduce in their territory for a long time. Even without this incident, there would come a day when humans would attack the barbarians, so retreating was the only way. The old patriarch nodded. "How's the stock preparation going?" "The preparations these days are almost done. As long as the old chief gives the order, we will hide in the forest. No matter how powerful that country-guarding Emperor Chu Tian is, he can't chase us into the forest to attack us." The old patriarch nodded. It seemed like this was the only way. Although the living conditions outside of the southern continent were a little harsh, they could still reproduce. It was better than staying in the southern continent and waiting for death. This is bad. This is bad. Chu Tian has led an army of several 100,000 to surround all 4 sides, trapping all the tribes. Chu Tian has issued an order. Before the hostages are rescued, any tribe that dares to act rashly will be annihilated. The old patriarch was shocked. The southern Xia army had surrounded the barbarians' living area so quickly. Now that they couldn't escape even if they wanted to, what should they do? In the end, only a few minutes had passed. This is bad. The humans are coming. Clansmen, fight with them. When these old barbarians heard the shouts outside, all of them were scared out of their wits and hurriedly ran out. A red-haired woman riding a griffin flew over with hundreds of griffin riders. All the young barbarians in the tribe picked up their javelins and rushed towards this flying unit. "Stop! Quickly stop!" The old patriarch's eyes almost popped out. These reckless youngsters, do they know what kind of army this is? This was Southern Xia's trump card, the Griffin Riders. This was a special force used to protect the royal family. Whether it was the riders or the mounts, they were all in the awakened soul realm. Don't think that the other side didn't have many people. These several hundred Griffin Riders were enough to destroy a barbarian tribe of several thousand people. Too late. These young-blooded barbarians were all like newborn calves that were not afraid of tigers. When they saw the Griffin Riders approach, they immediately threw their javelins. How could this level of attack injure the Griffin Riders? The Griffin Riders easily shot down the javelins that were thrown at them. Good. You barbarians. You actually dared to sneak attack the Southern Summer Army? It seems like you'll be the ones to attack my caravan. Nangong Yun was filled with rage as her red hair danced in the air. She pulled out an exaggerated storm rifle and angrily shouted with a fierce expression, "If I don't give you a taste, you won't know how strong I, Nangong Yun, am." This was the legendary source energy weapon. The old patriarch had only heard of it, but he had never seen it before. Nangong Yun did not give the barbarians a chance to explain. She raised the storm rifle and spat out an angry flame. Large amounts of source energy bullets wildly rained down on the barbarian tribe. The barbarians preparing to throw their javelins had never seen such a terrifying weapon before, so they were all hit until they covered their heads and ran. Too terrifying. This was simply a demon's weapon. Nangong Yun's storm rifle had fired several hundred source energy bullets in less than half a minute. That wild storm of bullets made every barbarian feel like their liver was being torn apart. Who would have thought that this was just the beginning? Nangong Yun loudly shouted, "Everyone open fire. Let these bumpkins experience the power of miracle commerce." The several hundred griffin riders put away their javelins and each one took out a source energy submachine gun. With several hundred source energy guns firing at the same time, what kind of scene was that? The barbarians had finally experienced the power of technology. In an instant, the rain of bullets fell down like a waterfall. The barbarian tribe's stone houses were destroyed, the tents were riddled with holes, and the ground was filled with holes. Who told you to go against miracle commerce? Who told you to steal our people? Who told you to go against the Southern Summer Army? Nangong Yun took out a hand grenade and threw it into the barbarians' food warehouse. With a terrifying explosion, large amounts of flames soared into the sky and the warehouse was razed to the ground. A portion of the griffin riders took out hand grenades and threw them into the barbarians' buildings. Red energy mushroom clouds popped up one after another like mushrooms. The old patriarch and the group of old barbarians were all stunned. The houses were gone, the land was gone, and the food was gone. Nangong Yun led the griffin army to wreak havoc for an entire 5 minutes. The barbarians could not resist at all and the entire tribe was completely destroyed. The only strange thing was that the tribe suffered heavy losses, but the barbarians did not suffer any casualties. Spare us. The old patriarch was filled with fear and worry, kneeling down with the barbarians. It really wasn't done by us. In the entire ambush, the griffin riders did not show any martial strength at all. They only used the source energy weapons to achieve this kind of terrifying effect. Even the most rebellious barbarian warriors would be shocked by this unheard-of scene. Their hearts would be branded with the undefeatable mark of miracle commerce. The large barbarian men were all scared out of their wits. They all knelt down with the patriarch and begged for mercy. Nangong Yun walked over with the burning storm rifle. With a wave of her left hand, she loudly shouted, "Search for me." The griffin riders split up to search, causing some destruction along the way. Finally the entire tribe was in a mess, but they could not find the miracle commerce people. Nangong Yunhu asked, "It really wasn't done by you?" The barbarians were bitterly crying. It really was a misunderstanding. How could they do this kind of thing? Fuck, since it wasn't done by you, why are you resisting? Nangong Yun slapped the old patriarch to the ground. Her eyes were filled with flames as she angrily shouted, "Do you know how much time you've wasted for us? If it was because of you, miracle commerce would have buried you with us. Come, let's go to the next tribe." Nangong Yun led the griffin riders away. The old patriarch stood up and looked at the smoking tribe with a dazed expression. This miracle commerce is not human, they are demons. That's right. Only demons have this kind of weapon. Even if we had 100 times more people, we still wouldn't be able to resist them. Quickly run. The old patriarch stared at these people and shouted, "Run? Run my ass. We don't have weapons, we don't have food, we don't have a tribe, we don't have anything. We are surrounded by the Southern Summer Army, how can we run? What do we do? Even if we aren't killed by the demons, we will still starve to death." That's right, they haven't saved the people yet, perhaps they have already been killed. That terrifying woman just said that if anything happened to the hostages, all the barbarians would be buried with them. The barbarians were filled with panic. This disaster had destroyed their homes and they had no weapons or food, so it was impossible for them to travel to the forest. But staying here was also a road to death, so what should they do? How about we surrender? Surrender? The old patriarch had never thought of this problem before, but after thinking about it, there was no other choice and they couldn't escape. If they wanted to keep their lives, there was only one way, which was to surrender to Miracle Commerce and help them tear the culprit's corpse into 10,000 pieces. Perhaps if Chu Tian was in a good mood, he would spare their lives. Although the barbarians did not have any skills, they were all very strong. Even 3-5 humans of the same level added together would not be as strong as a single barbarian, so they should have some value as laborers. That's right. We'll surrender. We'll help Chu Tian find the culprit. After seeing Miracle Commerce's strength, the old patriarch did not have any thoughts of resisting and immediately made the decision to surrender to Miracle Commerce. No matter what the result was, it would not be worse than now. If their luck was good, they could still keep their lives. After all, this matter was not done by them, so Miracle Commerce had no reason to vent their anger on an army that surrendered to them in order to keep their lives. It was not just a single tribe that did this. In just a short day, all the barbarians in the barbarian area had no home to return to. They were cursing their tribe for not having eyes and attacking Miracle Commerce, while they put down their weapons and begged for shelter with tears flowing down their faces. They did not have any requests, they just wanted to not die. Chapter 359. The young Miss Guess was right. The Calamity of the Barbarians was a masterpiece directed by Chu Tian. Actually, when he first came to Central State, Chu Tian had been secretly monitoring this special force. It wasn't that Chu Tian was afraid of the barbarians, rather Chu Tian was very interested in these barbarians. The barbarians were different from the weak humans. The barbarians were born with copper skin and iron bones. Most of the barbarians did not have the habit of cultivating because the barbarians' physical strength was very strong. It was around 10 times that of a grown man, around 5 times that of the leopard tribe spirit beasts and the wolf tribe spirit beasts. Even when compared to the tiger tribe spirit beasts and bear tribe spirit beasts, they were still 1 or 2 times stronger. The barbarians had a terrifying strength. Even if they did not cultivate, they were not inferior to the elite Southern Xia soldiers. This was why the Western Marquis had not completely exterminated the barbarians after occupying Southern State for so long. Rather, he had suffered losses at the hands of the barbarians and had no choice but to compromise. In Chu Tian's eyes, the 1 million barbarians living in Southern State could be a ticking time bomb or a gold mine. What did Chu Tian lack the most? Was it resources? Was it money or fame? No, he lacked soldiers. These barbarians were natural-born soldiers. As long as they were taught a bit, they would immediately become a strong army. At the beginning, Chu Tian didn't plan on using any sinister methods, he just wanted to slowly recruit them. Who would have thought that he would receive some reports recently that the various barbarian tribes were storing up food, as if there were signs of them withdrawing from the Southern State. How could this be allowed? Once the barbarians left Southern State and entered the Southern Forest, not only would it be hard for Chu Tian to use, it would also be a large hindrance to Miracle Commerce in the future. This was a barbarian force of over 1 million people. If they fought openly, unless they gathered together, Chu Tian would not care about them at all. But if they hid deep in the mountains, it would be 10 times more troublesome for Chu Tian than if they started a riot in Southern State. This was because Chu Tian had to pass through the south. With over 1 million bandits on this road, the consequences could be imagined. This could not happen. Therefore, Chu Tian sent Nangong Yun to destroy the barbarians' hard-earned stockpile under the pretext of rescuing the hostages, making them lose the ability to escape. This was to fully display the power of Miracle Commerce without killing too many barbarians, making these barbarians fear Chu Tian and Miracle Commerce from the bottom of their hearts. Because the barbarians did not dare to fight against Miracle Commerce, coupled with the fact that their supplies had been destroyed, there was no way for them to escape. In a situation where they had not done anything wrong, they could only hope that they would get lucky and surrender to Miracle Commerce, hoping that Miracle Commerce would be merciful and spare them. Chu Tian said to Dongfang Haoren, "Have the barbarians that have come to surrender gather in the valley. Take 100,000 cavalry and surround them, don't let them escape." "Yes." Dongfang Haoren immediately rode off. An entire 200,000 strong barbarian youths were brought to the valley and the 100,000 southern Xia cavalry were stationed on the high ground. These barbarians were very afraid seeing this. These southern Xia elite cavalry were very strong, so if the barbarians dared to rebel, the 100,000 cavalry would charge down from the high ground and all the barbarians would be finished. These barbarians were afraid, but the barbarians that remained in the tribe were even more afraid. Because the youths had all been taken away, the ones left in the tribe were all old and weak, so they did not have any ability to resist. Not to mention that the tribe had already been destroyed. Being in the ruins, they could not sit still at this moment. The barbarians anxiously shouted, "We want to see the country guarding ruler." Bang! A source energy cannon fired. That fierce energy flattened a small hill in front of the barbarians. The barbarians were stunned seeing this. Miracle Commerce had an even stronger weapon. If this thing was shot at a crowded area, the number of casualties would be in the hundreds. "All of you shut up for me." Dongfang Haoren was wearing a set of shining armor and was currently riding a blue stallion, running around the valley. He had the style of a great general and there was no expression on his square face at all. "The country guarding ruler is investigating the matter of the barbarians attacking the caravan, so you are all suspects. Just stay here and after this matter is over, the country guarding ruler will deal with you." Injustice. Injustice. This must have been done by the Black Rhino tribe. Nonsense. Our Black Rhino tribe hasn't done anything in half a month, this must have been done by the Iron Bull tribe. I saw them bring a team out a few days ago. Fuck. Don't slander us, we only went out to hunt. The barbarians quickly blamed each other. Their simple minds would never have thought that this entire matter was directed by Chu Tian and they were all victims. The barbarians did not believe that Miracle Commerce would do such a senseless thing because with Miracle Commerce's strength, it was not hard for them to destroy the barbarians, so why would they do such a thing? The barbarians became more and more fierce and finally they began to fight. They all fell into a ball in the valley and the crowd was thrown back and forth. It was a very intense fight. Hung, hung, hung. Another few hills were crushed. Dongfang Haoren raised the loudspeaker and shouted, "Whoever dares cause trouble will be killed." The barbarians immediately became obedient. "We all surrender. We beg the country guarding ruler for mercy." Chu Tian was sitting on the high ground drinking tea. He looked over the strong barbarians and nodded his head in satisfaction. As long as they were trained, they would immediately become good soldiers. This was truly the heavens helping him. These big fools are quite pitiful. Meng Yingying looked at the barbarians crying out in fear and hunger in the valley and couldn't help feeling compassion. "Our goal has been achieved and they have already obediently surrendered, so how about we let them go?" Chu Tian shook his head, "The barbarians are a rude and untrustworthy race. If we want to deal with these fellows, we can only teach them a deep lesson. Right now, it's not time yet. Look at them, they are all full of energy. Although they said they wanted to surrender, once we let them go, I guarantee that most of them will escape in less than a night. Then what do we do? Let's hang them out for a week until they can't run anymore." Meng Yingying felt that this was a bit cruel. What if they start a riot from hunger? Chu Tian gave a laugh and said, "The barbarians are soft and afraid of the hard. They have already shown their strength, so they don't dare act rashly. Not to mention, I didn't say I would kill them. As long as we don't give them hope, they will continue to wait." Meng Yingying sighed, "Stupid barbarians, it's not that I don't want to help you, but who told you to be targeted by Chu Tian? It would be strange if you weren't unlucky. He did what he said." Chu Tian trapped the barbarians for 7 days and 7 nights without food or water, only able to eat grass and drink rain. After 7 days, the barbarians were all flattened from starvation, looking like a large group of refugees. When the barbarians' bodies and minds were about to collapse, suddenly, the cavalry all retreated. Dongfang Haoren rode out on a large horse and announced, "I want to tell you a piece of good news. The bandits that attacked Miracle Commerce have been caught." The barbarians were shocked. They had finally been caught. These bandits came from the southern forest, they are not locals of southern state. The people have already been saved, so this matter has nothing to do with you. The country guarding ruler has already given the order to let you go. The barbarians were overjoyed. It had finally come to an end. The cavalry stationed all around retreated. The southern Xia army seemed like they were preparing to leave, leaving behind a group of stunned barbarians. "Wait a minute." Several old tribe chiefs quickly chased after them. "What is it?" "General, our tribe has been destroyed and we don't have any food left." Several old tribe chiefs said with sorrowful expressions, "Our tribesmen are starving and we can't walk anymore." Dongfang Haoren knit his brows. "What does the life and death of you barbarians have to do with southern Xia? You have to know that you have done many evil deeds, the country guarding ruler not killing you is already a great kindness." The barbarians began to plead, "We have already surrendered to the country guarding ruler, please give us a way out." "I can't make this decision." Dongfang Haoren said, "I have to go back and ask the country guarding ruler." "Thank you, General, thank you, General." Dongfang Haoren didn't leave for long before he returned. The barbarians had not left yet, probably because they didn't have any strength left. "The ruler's letter is here." Dongfang Haoren raised a scroll high up. The barbarians all knelt down to receive the country guarding ruler's letter. Dongfang Haoren loudly read it out. The content of this ruler's letter was, "This storm has caused heavy losses to the barbarians, but it is not worthy of sympathy. Who told the barbarians to burn, kill, and pillage, committing all sorts of evil deeds? However, the heavens are benevolent, so this ruler will give you a way out. For the long-term peace of southern state and for southern Xia to prosper, Miracle Commerce decided to invest money to rebuild an old city that had been abandoned by humans 50 years ago. With this city as the center, the area within 300 miles became a barbarian autonomous region for the barbarians to live in. In order to ensure that the barbarians would not return to their old ways, Miracle Commerce invested a large amount of money. Other than giving food to ensure that the barbarians did not starve to death, they also developed mines in the autonomous region and built large amounts of factories to provide jobs for the barbarians. The ruler's letter. The barbarians were boiling with excitement. The country guarding ruler wanted to build a city for the barbarians. What kind of boldness and bearing was this? The barbarians and humans rejected each other and living together was impossible, so the country guarding ruler wanted to build a barbarian autonomous region. In the early stages, they would provide food, and in the later stages, they would provide jobs for the barbarians so that they would no longer be bandits. The barbarians were at a loss about this. They did not know if they could adapt to this kind of life, but did they have any other choice? The barbarian tribes were already gone, and with the current situation, they did not have the conditions to evacuate, so they could only choose to give it a try. The tribe leaders discussed and decided to bring their people to the barbarian autonomous region to take a look. When they arrived at the autonomous region that Chu Tian divided for the barbarians, every barbarian was stunned by the scene in front of them. Although this old city was very old, it looked very large. Not only were the walls complete, the houses had been repaired, and there were even many temporary tents. Beast carriages entered the old city one after another. Every beast carriage was filled with fruits, wine, and meat. When the barbarians who were already starving smelled the tempting aroma of meat and wine, the last bit of worry in their hearts collapsed. They immediately accepted the country guarding ruler's proposal and declared their loyalty to the country guarding ruler. Then, they roared and rushed towards their new home. Chu Tian was very generous. Miracle Commerce had already sent large amounts of food, it was enough for the barbarians to not starve to death for a period of time. When the other barbarians who were wavering and had doubts found out that the barbarians who went first were already eating and drinking, how could they sit still? The autonomous region was managed by the barbarians themselves. The barbarians would not be controlled by humans, and they would be able to eat their fill and live a good life. Who wouldn't be willing? In a few days, the abandoned city immediately became lively. The barbarian autonomous region's population continued to increase, and 80 to 90% of the barbarians had come. This time was different from being forced to surrender to save their lives. The barbarians were willing to surrender. When Chu Tian saw the situation gradually stabilize, he issued a simple law for the barbarian autonomous region. He then used the cavalry to enforce military control over the barbarian city, completely controlling them. Chapter 360. The barbarians were not smart, they did not understand what was happening. Rather they were filled with gratitude towards Chu Tian. After all, Chu Tian did not kill them, rather he fed them well. Several 100,000 barbarians, each one had a shocking appetite. Eating meat and fish every day was a shocking consumption, so Miracle Commerce had no choice but to bring in food from other states to maintain it. The barbarians lived in a city that was abandoned to avoid the beast disaster. Miracle Commerce's employees installed streetlights, repaired the houses, and established law and order for the barbarians. Chu Tian promised that humans would not interfere with the internal management of the barbarians, and the various barbarian tribe leaders would form a team of several dozen people. The barbarians went from living in a primitive society to suddenly living a modern life. Because the factories and mines were not open, the barbarians ate and drank all day, so their lives were very comfortable. Chu Tian ordered people to announce a cultivation technique called the berserk art to the barbarians. He wrote a ruler's letter to everyone, giving a reward to encourage the barbarians to cultivate. Father Miracle Commerce has money. You barbarians obediently cultivate your cultivation technique in the city, don't eat your fill and cause trouble. Not only is the cultivation technique free, as long as you can cultivate it, you will be heavily rewarded. The barbarians did not dare believe that Miracle Commerce was not only supporting them and giving them better living conditions, it was also giving the barbarians cultivation techniques to cultivate. This was simply too crazy. Only was the cultivation technique suitable for the barbarians? The barbarian civilization did not have any cultivation techniques passed down. This was not only because the barbarian civilization level was low. The main reason was that the barbarians did not have any innate source spirit. Human cultivation techniques and even the mainstream cultivation techniques of the continent were not suitable for the barbarians. Therefore, most of the barbarians did not cultivate spirit energy and walked on the path of pure physical strength. The barbarians were all crazy with muscles, they were not worse than body refinement cultivators, but it was hard to find a true expert. Therefore, the barbarians could only be bandits, harming one side and robbing others. They had never established a kingdom or civilization, causing the barbarians to have a low status on the continent. The several dozen barbarian tribe leaders studied the cultivation technique. In the end, the old barbarian was shocked to discover that this berserk art was tailor-made for the barbarians. This had an essential difference from the other cultivation techniques on the continent. The mainstream cultivation techniques on the continent focused on cultivating one's source spirit and spirit energy, but this berserk art was innovative. It focused on cultivating one's physique and focused on training one's life force, so it didn't have a strong requirement for spirit energy. It was no exaggeration. This cultivation method could completely change the fate of the barbarians. The entire barbarian race was in an uproar. They all believed in the country-guarding monarch. Every day, the patriarchs organized the barbarians to train. Although they didn't know why the country-guarding monarch did this, there was no reason for them to reject such a good thing. The facts proved that there were no real fools in this world. It was just that they hadn't been properly developed and guided. Even if they were as stupid as the barbarians, as long as they found the right path, they could easily achieve success. In just a few days, someone in the barbarian tribe had mastered the berserk art. After Chu Tian learned of this, he immediately set off for the barbarian city. The country guarding emperor is here. Quickly come out and welcome him. The barbarians never thought that Chu Tian would have any plans. With the power in Chu Tian's hands, it wasn't hard for him to exterminate the scattered barbarians, so why did he have to go around in circles and make it so troublesome? Moreover, to repair the barbarian cities and provide food for them, he would need to spend real money, and it wouldn't be a small amount. Now he was giving the barbarians a cultivation technique, giving them a chance to change their fate. Chu Tian brought Chen Bingyu, Dongfang Haoren, and a few normal guards to the barbarian city. The entire barbarian city was very lively. There were many barbarians everywhere, each one was around 2 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in paint, with bird feathers and strange bone ornaments hanging from their bodies. It was a very spectacular scene. Country guarding emperor. Country guarding emperor. The barbarians loudly shouted, their voices were like thunder. Chu Tian was like an angel in the eyes of the barbarians. Several dozen barbarian patriarchs quickly came out to welcome him. Each barbarian knew in their hearts that this seemingly ordinary human man actually had the power to easily destroy the entire barbarian race. With a single word, the entire southern state barbarian race would disappear. Even the most civilized race on the continent respected the strong, not to mention a primitive and crude race like the barbarians. Therefore, when they faced Chu Tian, their hearts were filled with gratitude. Chu Tian went straight to the point and asked, "Who has grasped the berserk art?" Several dozen old barbarian patriarchs brought out over 100 young barbarians. Most of these barbarians were the young elites with the most potential. It was because of this that they were able to grasp the berserk art so quickly. This monarch wants to create a personal barbarian guard. Chu Tian directly said, "You are all the most outstanding barbarian warriors. From today onwards, you will follow me. Miracle Commerce will give you enough attention and training. As long as you work for me, you will not suffer a loss." What reason did these patriarchs have to refuse? This was the famous country guarding ruler. If the barbarians could become the country guarding ruler's personal guard, the barbarians' status would be completely different. Not to mention the fact that the country guarding ruler had promised to train them. This ruler was not only the person with the highest status in the southern summer country, he was also the leader of Miracle Commerce. He was famous for his wealth, and if they could obtain his training, they would truly become phoenixes. Chu Tian did not stay in the barbarian city and immediately brought the 100 barbarians to the southern state laboratory. Gu Qianqiu and a group of white-haired researchers were busy in the laboratory. They were fiddling with a strange sealed cabin. This sealed cabin was made of metal from top to bottom, and the cabin door was made of hard diamond. It was about 10 feet high, and could accommodate a barbarian warrior. The barbarians were very nervous. They did not know what Chu Tian wanted to do. Chu Tian explained to them, "No need to be nervous, this is not a bad thing for you. On the contrary, it is a good chance for you to be reborn." Gu Qianqiu took out a small and exquisite box that had several hundred bottles of dark red medicine inside. He randomly took one out. "Can we begin now?" These were the recently developed wild blood medicine. The materials used for the wild blood medicine were very rare. There were all kinds of fierce beast blood, demonic things, and etc. Although they were very rare, there weren't many areas where they could be used, so they weren't very expensive. Of course, this was only relatively speaking. This small box of medicine was worth at least several 100 million gold coins. Let's first test the barbarian's strength. The researchers brought the barbarians to a room on the side and began to use all kinds of physical testing equipment to test their fist strength, arm strength, and explosive strength. The barbarian's iron fist slammed down on an iron rake. Pang! The entire iron rake caved in, and the researchers immediately recorded it on the side. Fist strength 11. This was a very shocking number. This meant that in a situation where they had the same cultivation, this barbarian's pure physical strength was 13 times that of a human's. This barbarian was only at the 5th body refinement layer, but even a 9th body refinement layer human would not be able to block a single punch from him. Gu Qianqiu couldn't help feeling surprised. This is truly an unbelievable physical strength. Fist strength, arm strength, wrist strength, leg strength, all kinds of data were roughly calculated. The barbarian's physical strength and strength were all around 10 times that of a human's. The barbarians did not have any cultivation techniques, they could only rely on brute force to create their own territory. This was the foundation of the barbarian's survival. Begin the wild transformation test. A barbarian was sent into the sealed cabin. The researchers inserted a medicine into the injection hole and the dark red liquid was suddenly sucked out by the vacuum pressure. Then the sealed cabin was filled with a red mist. The barbarian did not know what was going on at first and looked around in a daze. Immediately after, waves of spicy and stimulating aura instantly spread around his body, causing his skin to become extremely hot. It was as if power was being released from every cell. His mind suddenly went blank, and intense pain, anger, and violence covered his divine sense. Ah! Ah! The barbarian cried out in pain in the sealed cabin. When a large amount of red mist was absorbed by his skin and body, the blood vessels in his eyes quickly spread. His originally dark skin gradually turned red, and the blue veins on his body bulged like centipedes, constantly twitching and twisting in his muscles. It was a very frightening scene to behold. Dong, dong, dong. The barbarian released a terrifying killing intent, like an angry rhinoceros slamming into the sealed cabin, causing the entire laboratory to shake. However, the sealed cabin was made of special diamond, so even if a giant elephant was trapped inside, it would not be able to escape. In a few seconds, his black skin turned dark red and the barbarian's muscles became at least a size stronger. Dong! At this time, a fist landed on the diamond cabin door, unexpectedly creating a few small cracks in the cabin door. This barbarian had already lost his consciousness and was like an angry killing machine. His body released a scarlet light as he roared and roared, continuously attacking the cabin door, trying to tear everything in sight to pieces. The barbarian soldier revealed a look of fear. What did the people from Miracle Commerce do? This wild state did not last long before the barbarian gradually calmed down. This was the effect of the berserk art he had cultivated, suppressing his wild rage and killing intent. The barbarian's breathing and heartbeat gradually stabilized, but his body was still filled with a dangerous aura, just like a terrifying beast. The red mist gradually disappeared, completely absorbed. Chu Tian waved his hand at Gu Qianqiu. Open it. Nothing bad will happen, right? Relax, everything is under control. Gu Qianqiu was not afraid of him. Although living beings had gone berserk and their strength had increased by more than 10 times, it was still impossible for him to threaten a peak 9th awakened soul layer cultivator. The barbarian soldier walked out of the sealed cabin. Chu Tian asked, "How do you feel?" "I don't know." The barbarian man had a blank expression. "I feel like my strength has increased by quite a bit." Chu Tian made a gesture, fist strength test. The researcher took out a fist target and let the barbarian test his strength. Hong! The barbarian's heavy fists slammed into the metal target and an explosive sound rang in everyone's ears. The metal target instantly shattered into pieces. His fist strength has broken through 100. Everyone couldn't help taking in a cold breath. If this fist hit a first awakened soul layer cultivator, it would be enough to cripple them. Chu Tian conducted other tests on the barbarian soldier. Whether it was his body's strength, endurance, or explosive power, they all received a terrifying increase. The barbarian's sensitivity to pain had greatly decreased, his willpower had increased by a large amount, and his body's recovery rate had increased by several times. This was the effect of going berserk. The Miracle Commerce researcher revealed a look of surprise. Chu Tian nodded in satisfaction. "That's right, this is the berserker I wanted." Chapter 361. In the era that Chu Tian lived in, the barbarians no longer existed. Chu Tian had done some research on this race. Speaking of the barbarians were a close relative of humans in the ancient era, but they had mixed the bloodline of an ancient beast. The ancestors of the barbarians were a very strong race, but after several tens of thousands of years, the wild energy in the barbarians' blood became thinner and thinner, so this race became weaker and weaker. The barbarians were a rare race that relied on their physical strength. Although they could not awaken their source spirit and were not suited to cultivating any attributed cultivation techniques, the barbarians had a very strong life force. If they could cultivate a non-attributed cultivation technique and develop their physical strength to the peak, the barbarians would still be a strong race. The wild blood medicine was a special medicine that could cause a berserk reaction. What was berserk? Berserk was similar to the demonic transformation. When the infernal flames invaded the thunder state, the abyss aura caused a large number of humans to be demonized, causing many weak or weak low-level cultivators to suddenly become terrifying abyss demon soldiers, which could directly threaten high-level cultivators. This was the result of the demonic transformation. The berserk transformation was similar to the demonic transformation, but the principle was different. The dark energy infecting a living being was the cause of the demonic transformation, but the berserk transformation was when the power of a fierce beast surged in, stimulating one's potential and fully developing one's physical strength. The demonic transformation was more extreme, so it was basically irreversible. Although the berserk transformation was not as extreme as the demonic transformation, normal living beings would still pay a large price for going berserk. The berserk transformation could increase one's strength by a large amount, but the price was losing one's rationality. They would become crazy and bloodthirsty, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. The berserk transformation would wildly slaughter everything in sight. There would be no pain, no fatigue, and finally they would die from exhaustion. The barbarians had a special physique and bloodline, so they were one of the few living beings that could undergo the berserk transformation. The berserk art was a cultivation technique made for the berserkers. Not only could it train the berserker's potential, it could also suppress the berserker's berserk state, allowing the berserker to maintain a clear mind in battle. The most important thing was that with each berserk transformation, this cultivation technique would quickly evolve. When this terrifying super soldier was created, Chu Tian would bring them to battle all over the place, allowing the berserkers to participate in battle. This way, the berserker's strength would become higher and higher. Each berserker had a strong destructive might. Once they went berserk, they would not feel pain, fatigue, or fear. They were a group of endless killing machines. This was a unit that could quickly level up. Gu Qianqiu began to transform the remaining 100 barbarians into berserkers. These barbarians were the elites of the barbarian race. When they went berserk, they could instantly cripple a second or third awakened soul layer cultivator in close combat. If such warriors were to form a large army in the future, they would definitely become a sharp knife in the hands of miracle commerce. Even in a warring kingdom, they could be called a trump card army. It was also a high-level army that could grow. Chu Tian planned to create a berserker unit within a month. The initial cost of creating these berserkers wasn't low. It was mainly due to the production of berserker potions. After the berserker army was formed, they would often need berserker potions to level them up. However, compared to the value of the army, this price was completely acceptable to miracle commerce. A powerful army could not be without powerful equipment. Chu Tian had specially ordered a set of equipment for the berserker army. First was the normal equipment and weapons. The barbarian warriors were very strong, so normal light armor and weapons were not suitable for them. Therefore, the berserkers' basic equipment was a set of thick profound iron armor and a giant axe that weighed several hundred pounds. The equipment itself was made of level 3 metal with runes engraved on it, so normal awakened soul cultivators would find it hard to damage it. If this equipment was worn by a human, they wouldn't be able to stand after a few steps, but it was as light as a feather for the berserkers. A profound iron axe was swung with the strength of a barbarian soldier. It was very heavy and could split mountains and rivers. If it was an army of tens of thousands of berserkers, it would be like building a steel wall on the battlefield. At least in southern Xia, other than the Griffin Knights in the air, no other army could break through this kind of defense. How could normal equipment be enough? This was a direct army of miracle commerce. Chu Tian came to the weapons department of the Yun Sect's laboratory. How is the research on the source energy cannons? Yun Tianhe was working with a group of scholars. Meng Qinggu was also helping out in the laboratory, so she personally introduced it to Chu Tian. There are no results for now. The source energy cannons were one of the weapons Chu Tian had made for the berserkers. This kind of weapon was a compressed version of the source energy cannons. Although it did not have the terrifying destructive power of the source energy cannons, it was very portable. With the barbarian warriors' strength, they could carry it with them. With several dozen people equipped, they could easily break through the battlefield and provide a strong destructive power for the entire team. Although it was just a smaller version, it was not simple, so it was normal for it not to be completed. What about the source energy swords? There are some results, but they can't be used. When he looked through the window of a laboratory, Chu Tian could see a few researchers working on a strange weapon. This weapon looked like a small handle with a strong energy structure inside. The handle was a source energy array, and when the weapon was activated, a high heat energy beam came out of the handle. It looked a bit like a flashlight. But the difference was that the beam of light from the handle was condensed. When the high energy combined, it formed a solid substance, so it had a terrifying temperature. It could cut through steel like tofu. This was a basic close combat source energy weapon. Chu Tian had given the blueprints and let the laboratory try to make it. From the looks of it, the results were not good enough and each energy sword was not stable. Where is the main problem? The main problem is materials and energy. Meng Qinggu replied, most of our materials come from southern Xia. Even if we use the highest grade materials, it is hard to withstand the heat and power of the energy swords. Other than that, our energy batteries are not strong enough and the energy swords weaken after 10 seconds, so it is hard to stabilize the energy swords. When we were making the source energy cannons, we had already used up all of our high-grade metals. Chu Tian gave a sigh. There really wasn't a perfect thing in this world. They were prepared to make 8,000 berserkers. Each berserker would wear heavy armor, a heavy axe, and they would be equipped with source energy grenades, source energy swords, individual cannons, and storm rifles, suitable for all kinds of situations. If they could really have this kind of army, Chu Tian could directly charge into the forest of chaos and kill everyone. No matter how strong the locals were, could they block this kind of formation? Perhaps 100 storm rifles would be enough to make the locals run for their lives. We need large amounts of weapons. Meng Qinggu was very clear on Miracle Commerce's situation, especially the source energy cannons and storm rifles, these super strong weapons. Only, these weapons have very high requirements for materials and we can't find this kind of ore in southern Xia. I'm afraid we'll be stuck here for a long time. Time is precious, we can't drag it out. Chu Tian said, starting from tomorrow, we'll split up. You wouldn't be thinking of going to the Forest of Chaos first, right? Miracle Commerce was not prepared yet, so wouldn't rushing to the Forest of Chaos alert the enemy? The Eagle Burial Kingdom could make a move against Southern Summer at any time, so Chu Tian had to prepare ahead of time. You'll stay in Southern State and be in charge of the Forest of Chaos outer layer, as well as the recruitment work. I'll enter the Forest of Chaos. Relax, I'm going to find resources this time and ask around, I won't make a big deal out of this. Meng Qinggu was a bit hesitant, I'm afraid it's too risky. I'll bring Vivian and everything will be fine. Vivian's cultivation was deep and she had an innate spatial energy. Even if she met someone she couldn't beat, she would most likely be able to run away. So with Vivian by Chu Tian's side, Chu Tian would be very safe. Then it's like this. Meng Qinggu took over all the work and began to build the Berserker army. On the second day, Miracle Commerce brought out over 100 reborn barbarians. Each one was equipped with powerful armor and weapons and Meng Qinggu brought them to Barbarian City. Barbarian City was instantly filled with a large stir. The old chief never would have thought that after leaving for a few days, his clansmen would all become completely different people. Their strength had increased by at least 5-6 times. Any one of these 100 people would be a terrifying existence that an early or mid-awakened soul cultivator would find hard to deal with. What made the barbarians even more jealous was Southern States Marquis Meng Qinggu announced, "These 100 people have officially joined Miracle Commerce and are now directly trained by Miracle Commerce." This was equal to receiving an iron rice bowl. Miracle Commerce was famous for its generous treatment. Other than that, each barbarian that became a berserker would not only gain strength, their families would also be taken care of by Miracle Commerce. The berserkers had signed a contract with Miracle Commerce. As long as they served for 5 years, their freedom would no longer be restricted. The berserkers had the right to withdraw from the army and return to live in the barbarian region. Miracle Commerce did not need to take the initiative to recruit people. In just a few short days, several tens of thousands of young barbarians cried and begged to become Miracle Commerce's soldiers. They would give you strength, they would give you freedom, and they would take care of your family. To the barbarians, this was a chance to stand out. Of course, Miracle Commerce was not polite. Meng Qinggu used her status as the Southern States Marquis to publicly announce, "As long as you cultivate the berserker art, you can join Miracle Commerce's reserve army and line up to become a berserker." Once the news came out, in just 2 short days, the number of berserkers in the reserve army reached over 1,000. Miracle Commerce made large amounts of berserker medicine, barely meeting the demand. However, with the increasing number of people in the reserve army and the running out of berserker medicine materials, this task could not be completed in a short period of time. Recently Meng Qinggu had been in charge and Chu Tian had not appeared for several days. Only the high-level members of Miracle Commerce knew that he had quietly left Southern State and headed to the unknown south. Chapter 362. The Forest of Chaos did not have 4 seasons, there was only a rainy season and a dry season. It was the Forest of Chaos rainy season right now. The warm and humid air flowed from the west coast to the mountain range, covering the entire Forest of Chaos. The fertile soil and the small population made it easy to obtain food and there were many varieties to choose from. Whether it was spirit beasts, elves, or even ogres, as long as they found a piece of land and scattered their seeds, they would be able to harvest many delicious fruits in the coming year without any cultivation. There was no kingdom, no law, and no order here. People did not need to pay taxes and they did not need to bow down to anyone. As long as they were strong enough, the rich forest's resources were endless. This was the heaven of the strong. It was the hell of the weak. The rich and complex environment gave birth to many different kinds of life. From the ancient species to the rare beasts of the modern era, from the ancient dragons to the elegant elves, they all regarded the Forest of Chaos as their ideal home. Although the resources here could support 100 times the population, it was hard to avoid fighting where there was life. Humans fighting with humans, humans fighting with beasts, and beasts fighting with beasts were already the most common scenes in the forest. There was no end to their desires. For example, the Dragon Lord. This was a giant dragon that had lived for thousands of years, occupying the noble dragon city. It was said that his wealth could be piled up into the sky. However, he was still not satisfied with this. He would plunder large amounts of wealth from the subordinate cities every year. The giants of the giant mountain range, they emptied 100 miles of mountains and built the largest palace in the Forest of Chaos. The treasures inside were coveted by countless experts of the continent. The Elven King ruled the Elven Council, controlling several dozen elven cities and working with several small and medium-sized races, becoming one of the strongest powers in the forest. They controlled countless ancient knowledge and wisdom. The beautiful sea race queen built a city in the sea, stretching from the far west coast to the center of the Forest of Chaos. She wanted to take all the treasures of the sea and land into her hands. There were countless other powers that were not weaker than peak warring kingdoms. They wildly explored the Forest of Chaos, endlessly fighting and killing. The powers intertwined with each other and the Forest of Chaos was in chaos. Heroes rose together, the strong contended, the weak could only choose to be vassals, and even more of the weak tried their best to hide themselves, maintaining the laws of the dark forest. No one knew just how many unknown secrets and strengths were hidden in this primitive forest. The Forest of Chaos, the outer region. This place was not strongly affected by the rainy season, but it was still warm and humid. This was a very low-developed area. The roots of the giant trees were everywhere, and all kinds of fungi and algae were scattered all over the place. There were also countless poisonous snakes, insects, and flowers. Every corner seemed to be hiding a deadly crisis. In the middle of a dense jungle, there was a spacious clearing in the middle. This looked like a magical beast lair, and there were roughly 10 or so giant lizards lying there. Each of them gave off a terrifying aura, and their bodies were covered with emerald scales that gave off waves of light, as if they were made from jade. In the center of these lizards was a spring filled with powerful life energy. When soaked in this aura, magical beasts could maintain their growth without hunting. Rustle! Rustle! There was a sudden movement in the forest. The giant lizard smelled the scent and stood up. It let out a low, warning growl towards the forest. The bushes full of berries suddenly shook a few times, and a few extremely sharp sword cheese shot out. In an instant, the beautiful scales of the giant lizard were shattered, and several lizards were injured. Roar! The lizards angrily counterattacked. They opened their large mouths and didn't see anything being spat out, but the roots and bushes on the ground seemed like they were hit by some kind of energy. They all shattered into the air and each fragment seemed like it had been twisted. 5 people wearing travelers' cloaks appeared in their field of vision. Although it was 5 normal humans, the lizards felt a dangerous aura and immediately attacked together. Who would have thought that at this time, one of them would cut open the space in front of them? The invisible energy the lizards shot out was all sucked into the spatial crack. Dong! The lizard's scales exploded in an instant, and all the energy landed on him. The leader of the lizards was incomparably angry. Its 4 strong limbs stepped off the ground and it charged at the 3 of them. At this moment, a little white fox jumped out. Its small body suddenly expanded and transformed into a huge demon fox. When it was stared at by the demon fox's strange eyes, the lizard king instantly froze on the spot. Then, it suddenly turned around and launched a fierce attack on the other lizards. Another person jumped out. A cold current came out and turned a lizard into an ice sculpture. Another person took out a giant sword and slashed the ice sculpture into pieces. There was no suspense in this battle. The 10 lizards were not weak, but they were still level 2 demon beasts. There were a few strong ones that were in the 7-8th awakened soul layer, and the weakest of these humans was in the 7th awakened soul layer. There was even an elf that had the strength of a true soul cultivator. That's right. These 5 travelers were not others, they were Chu Tian's group. Meng Ying took out a whistle-like object and blew it hard. The surrounding forest immediately shook and a large group of people rushed out. When these people saw the lizard corpses on the ground, they all gave a happy cheer. The village chief gave the 10 sacred herbs to Chu Tian. This was his thanks to Chu Tian's group. This life essence water originally belonged to their village, but it had been forcefully taken by a group of lizards passing by. Although the village had tried to attack them several times, they had suffered heavy casualties and returned without any results. Today they had met 5 outsiders that were willing to help them, so everything that had just happened. They never thought about it. Just by casually eradicating a nest of lizards, they could actually obtain so many precious herbs, and this was only from an unknown small village. The Forest of Chaos was rich in resources, it was not something Southern Xia could compare to. That night, the spirit beasts had already lit a bonfire. The large pieces of juicy lizard meat were all skewered on iron rods and roasted over the fire. The fragrant fat continued to drip into the fire, making a sizzling sound. The rabbit people were dancing around the bonfire. Each one of them had a look of joy on their faces. Several cute rabbit race girls were holding good lizard meat as they sent it over to Chu Tian with shy red faces. Their eyes were filled with hints. If there was a need, they were willing to provide some special services. There were no moral restrictions in the forest of chaos, and the spirit beasts were like this. Chu Tian looked at the rabbit race girls with interest. From their appearance, the rabbit race was in line with human aesthetics. They were not covered in fur like some spirit beasts. These spirit beasts had many human characteristics, only having rabbit tails, ears, and etc. The rabbit race had quite a bit of foreign beauty. These rabbit race girls were clearly chosen by the village chief to please these people. Chu Tian left these rabbit race girls to drink with them and also to ask for information. Meng Yingying used the source energy barbecue array to reheat the meat. This meat tastes pretty good. Is that so? I think it's a bit old. Their mouths were covered in oil, and the little fox had already eaten several dozen kilograms of barbecue meat. They were surrounded by rabbits, delicious barbecue meat, special fruit wine, and a primitive village. All of this had a special flavor. In short, it was something that couldn't be felt in a human country. They brought a total of 5 people this time. Chen Bingyu, Dongfang Haoren, and Vivian, these 3 were either bodyguards or guides. As for Meng Yingying, she was purely here to play. Chu Tian was already a high-level awakened soul cultivator in the 8th awakened soul layer. Meng Yingying had broken through to the 7th awakened soul layer 2 days ago, only a bit later than Nangong Yun and much faster than Meng Qinggu and the others. Because of Vivian's strong request, Chu Tian brought her along as a reward for her hard work. In a few days, everyone was only at the edge of the forest. The forest of chaos was too large, it was several dozen times larger than the southern summer country. Although this area was mainly covered in forest, it was not completely covered in forest. There were also deserts, beaches, swamps, and other areas. Other than that, the population density of the forest of chaos could not compare to southern Xia, but the demon beast density was several times higher than southern Xia. It was because the forest of chaos was too large. Vivian was not clear on the situation here, so she could only talk about the large powers. As for the other small powers and hidden powers, not to mention her who rarely went out, even an elven elder wouldn't be able to explain them. Meng Yingying took a bite of the roasted meat. How can we establish ourselves in the forest? Is there a need to say? Of course it's to steal a city. Vivian said without even thinking. The forest of chaos has tens of thousands of cities, and most of these cities are built in places with the richest spiritual veins, the most resources, and the safest environments. As long as we can steal a city, we can become a lord and develop our influence through managing the city. For a small village like this, there is a lot of mobility, it won't be able to grow. Meng Yingying found this very interesting. Then what are we waiting for? Can't we just directly steal it? Chu Tian rolled his eyes. If stealing a city was that easy, the forest of chaos would have already been unified by others. That's right, that's right. Vivian nodded in agreement. The forest of chaos is much stronger than southern Xia. Any random forest city would have quite a few true spirit cultivators guarding it. If we want to capture this city, the difficulty would not be lower than capturing Southern Summer's imperial city. Meng Yingying was secretly speechless. Any random city in the forest of chaos had this kind of shocking strength? With Miracle Commerce's current strength, they really couldn't steal it. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to defend it. After all, in this chaotic area, the hundreds of races were very chaotic. Vivian said with a sigh, it's a pity that I'm not an adult yet, otherwise I could ask Royal Father to give me an elven city. Pooh! They almost spat out the things in their mouths. Chu Tian also looked at Vivian with a face of surprise. Although he knew that Vivian's status wasn't low, he never thought it would be this high. Could it be that her father was the Elven King? But it seems like there's no hope now. I left the tribe to gain experience, and this matter has definitely been reported to the council. With this stain, the council will not approve it. Chapter 363. So what if Vivian could come to a city? The elves were xenophobic, especially afraid of humans. They would not allow humans to live in the city, and they would not allow humans to manage the city. Letting Chu Tian live in the elven city was a kind of restriction. The Forest of Chaos environment was different from Southern Xia. If one didn't have a strong enough fist, they wouldn't be able to protect it no matter how many they had. This was also the reason why Chu Tian was not in a rush to find allies in the forest. In this chaotic and disorderly place, they would make a move if they wanted to. As long as there was profit to be made, there would be no reason at all. Honored guests. The rabbit race village chief walked over with a cane. He was a bit afraid, but he respectfully said, "You've taken back the spring water for the village, we are very grateful to you. Is there anything we can help you with?" The rabbit race was a kind of spirit beast, but they were a low-class spirit beast race. The spirit beasts were one of the most complex races on the continent. Humans had dwarves, barbarians, giants, and other ancient relatives. The elves had forest elves, snow elves, flame elves, and etc. However, there had never been a race like the spirit beasts that had several hundred branches. Each branch was an independent species, which was very incredible. The special characteristic of the spirit beasts was that the higher the level of the spirit beast, the more violent they were, and the lower the level of the spirit beast, the more docile they were. The rabbit race was a race that did not like fighting because they were weak, so the rabbit race relied on higher level races to survive. There weren't many independent rabbit race villages like this, and once they were targeted by hunters or demon beasts from other races, they would immediately be exterminated. The rabbit race did not have anything, and their civilization was very backward. They didn't even understand source energy arrays, not to mention alchemy. The spring of life was the foundation of the rabbit race's survival. Chu Tian's group had helped them take back the spring of life from the demon beasts. This was a large favor to the rabbit race. The only thing the rabbit race was worried about was that they had other plans. If these people had any bad intentions, this village would not be able to be kept. All the rabbit race members had to leave as soon as possible to avoid a disaster. "We are just some normal adventurers. We came to the Forest of Chaos this time to buy some materials. However, we are not familiar with the Forest of Chaos, so where can we buy materials from? We will need the village chief's guidance." Right now, he wasn't strong enough, so it wasn't a bad thing to keep a low profile. Chu Tian had already thought of a goal when he came to the Forest of Chaos. He just wanted to find a suitable material channel for miracle commerce and supply them with high-level materials to satisfy the source energy weapons production. He wouldn't participate in the chaotic battles of the Forest of Chaos for now. Seize a city to build a faction? Forget it. With their current strength, any random tribe could probably cripple miracle commerce. More haste, less speed. Let's build a berserker army first. About 100 miles away from here, there's a settlement. It's a temporary town. If the nearby villages need to exchange their daily necessities, it's all done in this town. The rabbit village chief seemed to sigh in relief. While this small town is not large, we can find many forest specialties. Even if we cannot find anything that Sir is satisfied with, it is more convenient to obtain information there. A temporary town. Chu Tian could more or less understand. The small races and even medium-sized powers of the Forest of Chaos were all forced to follow the Dark Forest Law. So the Dark Forest Law was not hard to understand. It meant that in a dark forest, there were countless hunters. These hunters could all become each other's prey, so it was necessary to hide in this kind of environment. Once they were exposed, it was very risky. Not only would it attract the attacks of other hunters, it would also attract the attention of other giants. There would be the danger of being swallowed up or even being exterminated. Therefore, if the small and medium-sized races wanted to develop in the Forest of Chaos, they had to follow this law. Because they didn't dare expose themselves, how could they exchange for daily necessities with the outside world? This kind of temporary town was a method. When the villages needed supplies, they would disguise themselves and come to the small town. After exchanging for what they needed, they would immediately leave this place, not daring to stay for too long to avoid attracting the attention of others. Since they had obtained some information, they would set off. "Sir, please wait." The rabbit race village chief could see that Chu Tian was the leader of this group. He gently clapped his hands and several well-developed rabbit race beauties came out. These rabbit race girls had all been cleaned up and their watery eyes stared at Chu Tian. "What is the meaning of this?" "These are the 10 most beautiful girls in the village, they are all virgins. They are now offered to Sir and will become Sir's personal maids. The rabbit race is very gentle and warm, they will definitely serve Sir well." "Fuck, it can't be." Chu Tian was a bit stunned. The rabbit race looked a bit strange, after all, they were not the same race as humans. However, from a human's aesthetic point of view, the rabbit race girls were petite, full, and gentle, they were the best choice for maids. In the human world, a beautiful rabbit girl could be sold for a very high price, not to mention a virgin. But Chu Tian could clearly feel a sharp gaze staring at him. Even Chen Bingyu was silently looking at him and Vivian was also frowning. How could he take this? Chu Tian righteously refused. "How could I, Chu Tian, be someone who is greedy for beauty and tramples on others? I appreciate the village chief's good intentions, but I cannot accept this kind of gift." The rabbit race village chief said, "No, this is their honor. I hope Sir will not decline." These words were not false, the rabbit race girls revealed looks of desire. They lived in the forest of chaos, living in precarious situations every day. If they were taken in as maids by an expert, it would be like flying up a branch and turning into a phoenix. Not to mention that this human was in line with the rabbit race's aesthetic point of view, it was much better than those fierce-looking tigers and bears. From the perspective of the rabbit race, they could use this to monitor Chu Tian. If Chu Tian went back and spread the location of the rabbit race's village, these rabbit girls could run back and report, protecting the safety of the village. They had to be careful in a place like the Forest of Chaos. "Village chief, don't force us. The small town is very dangerous, it isn't safe for us to bring the rabbit girls." Meng Yingying suddenly stood up and said, "Leave them here first and we'll take them away when we have a chance." "That's it." The rabbit race village chief saw that the other side didn't want it and his heart couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Was not being greedy for small benefits really noble, or was he preparing to be greedy for more? This was truly a blessing or a curse. The rabbit race village chief's eyes fell on Meng Yingying, Vivian, and Chen Bingyu for a few seconds, but this person had so many beauties by his side. Perhaps he really didn't like the rabbit village's common women, so he could only comfort himself like this. Chu Tian left the small village. Meng Yingying gave 2 coughs and said, "The 10 beautiful maids are gone, are you disappointed?" "How could that be? Am I, Chu Tian, this kind of person? I am a free love advocate, this kind of transaction needs the location of the sword art. Who knows what you're thinking in your heart?" Meng Yingying rolled her eyes. She looked at the rabbit village that was shrouded in a faint firelight and sighed, but these rabbit people are quite pitiful. They are clearly so weak, yet they have to live in such a dangerous environment. I'm afraid that it's only a matter of time before they are discovered or destroyed. But it's really strange. The Forest of Chaos is clearly rich in resources, so why are they fighting each other? The Forest of Chaos has always been like this. If you don't destroy me, then I destroy you. Vivian was already used to it, it's hard for small tribes and small powers to survive. As long as they are targeted by a stronger power, they will be attacked for no reason. Meng Yingying said to Chu Tian, "Hey, since this place is this chaotic, you should just unify it and let these weak races survive." "Damn, look at your tone, it's like it's easy. Not to mention the others, what about the Dragon Lord?" The weapons that Chu Tian could make now wouldn't even be able to harm a single one of his scales, not to mention the Elven King, the Titan, the Beast King, and the Sea King, all these strong existences. But Chu Tian was not a cowardly person. He immediately patted his chest and said, "Since it's Yingying's orders, I'll do my best to complete it. Meng Yingying revealed a sweet smile, feeling very satisfied in her heart. Since Chu Tian said this, there was definitely no problem. There was nothing in this world that he couldn't do. Vivian was very envious of Yingying and Chu Tian's relationship. Chu Tian was the person she admired the most. When the five of them set off, it was already midnight. Traveling through the forest at night was a big taboo because most demon beasts wanted to move at night. However, Chu Tian was very bold and he did not think that there would be anyone that could threaten him in the forest of chaos periphery. The lost forest was filled with large amounts of fireflies, sunlight vines, glow grass, fluorescent mushrooms, and etc. They automatically glowed at night. Although it wasn't very bright, it wasn't to the point where one couldn't see their fingers in front of them. Of course, not everything that glowed was good. There were some demons and monsters that released beautiful lights and illusions to confuse people's hearts, finally luring their prey into a trap. This was a beautiful and magical scene, but there were dangers everywhere. The sounds of insects were sinister and there were demon beast roars coming from unknown places. The five of them didn't stop for a single moment. Although they were attacked several times along the way, they passed through without any danger. They finally arrived at their destination in the early morning. The morning glow was like a flame that fell into the forest. The pale golden sun covered the small town of Sardo, quietly standing in the small valley in the dense forest. If it wasn't for the rabbit race's village chief's reminder, even if they passed by, they wouldn't have known that there was a small town like this. It was hidden very well. It was covered in green vines, almost fusing with the forest. Sardo meant forest house in the spirit beast language, so most of the people in this small town were spirit beasts. The small town did not have guards or a mayor. In this place where laws were worse than dog shit, strength was everything. Whoever had a harder fist could do whatever they wanted. What made Chu Tian very surprised was that although it was small, it had everything. There were only a few thousand people in the small town, there were taverns, grocery stores, and all kinds of shops. However, those that could live here were not easy to deal with. For example, the owner of the Alchemist Hall, he was a fugitive from the Great Zhou country. This person was proficient in alchemy, refining poison to kill over 300 enemies. He escaped to the forest of chaos from the Great Zhou country and lived in seclusion in this small town, becoming one of the few humans here. He had been doing very well these past few years. Because alchemists were very rare here, when the important people in the village were sick, they needed to find him to treat them. Therefore, in just a few short years, this fellow had recruited many female apprentices and they were all high-quality goods. The female apprentices only learned a bit about herbs. They could help during the day and they could be used to relieve their desires at night. If a customer liked them, of course they were welcome to use them. Only there would be a special service charge when the medical fees were paid, sometimes it was even more than their normal income. These girls did not have any property and they had to endure being trampled and tortured all day, but they were very satisfied with their master and their current life. If it wasn't for their master having a bit of status, how could they eat their fill and live safely? After all, the lives of slaves were no different than insects. Strong alcohol, tobacco, hallucinogens, slaves, violence, and flesh. This small town was a small miniature of the forest of chaos, but it represented the majority of the forest of chaos. Chapter 364. The small town gave people a very strange feeling. Each person was tightly wrapped and not only were they wearing large hoods, they were also wearing all kinds of strange masks. They were in a hurry and didn't talk to anyone. This place was specially built to facilitate the exchange of goods between the villages. Most of the people were from the nearby villages and these villages were on guard against each other. As for the permanent residents of the town, whether it was the Great Zhou country's alchemist or the weapon shop owner, they were all criminals that escaped from various places. Each person was a hidden danger. Who was willing to deal with this kind of person? There was another kind of person hiding in the small town. This kind of person was a hunter, a bandit, or a human trafficker. Their job was to find a suitable village and kill them for profit. The women of the rabbit race, fox race, and elves could all be sold for a good price. As for the dwarves, bears, tigers, and etc., they were all qualified slaves. The Forest of Chaos was rich in resources, and even the smallest village had quite a bit of treasures. Therefore, killing and stealing was the fastest way to get rich. There were no laws or rules here, so who could resist this kind of temptation? Under this layer of danger, a small town in the Forest of Chaos was completely different from a civilized country. It was very dangerous coming here each time. If it wasn't done well, not only would a person's life be in danger, it would even bring a disaster to the entire clan. It was because of this that Chu Tian's group was too eye-catching. The 5 of them did not hide themselves at all and swaggered in like this. Other than the elf who couldn't be judged, the other 4 looked very young and didn't seem very strong, so how could they not attract attention? They were simply pieces of fat meat. When the 5 of them arrived in the small town, they immediately felt over 10 gazes filled with ill intent. Dongfang, go and ask around. Chu Tian ignored the people sharpening their knives in the corner. See if this town has anything we want. All right. Dongfang Haoran turned around and left. This Dongfang Haoran was the previous Southern Summer King's eldest son and had the chance to become the new king of Southern Summer, but now he had become a member of Miracle Commerce. This was fate playing with people. But Dongfang Haoran did not have any interest in the throne, rather following Miracle Commerce would allow him to have a better growth. This fellow was like an unpolished jade. With a bit of polishing, he would become another calm martial ruler, even surpassing Dongfang Gan. Chu Tian decided to nurture Dongfang Haoran into a general of Miracle Commerce. In the future, he would have to rely on him to lead Miracle Commerce's army. However, Dongfang Haoran was too young. Bringing him along to gain experience was a good thing. Let's find a place to rest. There should be a hotel here. The 4 of them hadn't even taken 2 steps. Stop! A few burly figures stood in front of him, each holding a weapon in their hands. Chu Tian fixed his eyes on them and saw that they were several ferocious-looking people of different races. There were thieves of the rat race and brawny men of the barbarian race. Their leader was a lizard man covered in green scales. Because of the close distance, Chu Tian could even smell the pungent stench coming from the man's body. Chu Tian frowned. What can I do for you? The few of them looked at each other with greed in their eyes. Your goods aren't bad. The lizard man in the lead threw out 3 low-grade source stones and then pointed behind him as he said, I'll buy these 3 women. Take the money and scram. Chu Tian was stunned. What was this? 3 low-grade source stones? That ferocious lizard man stared at Chu Tian. Are you deaf? I've already given you the money and your women are in my hands. If you don't scram, I'll teach you a lesson. Go ask around and see who dares offend us in this small town. Meng Yingying, Vivian, and Qin Bingyu's faces sunk. Although they knew that the atmosphere in the Forest of Chaos was bad, being this rude in broad daylight really made people angry. Although there were many people watching, most of them were just here to watch the show. Chu Tian narrowed his eyes and said, It seems like you don't understand the situation. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. The lizard man pulled out the blade at his waist and a green spirit energy was released, then die. Not weak. An illustrious soul realm strength. In this kind of unknown small town, a random small character actually had the strength of the 4th awakened soul layer. No wonder he dared to be this arrogant. The Forest of Chaos overall strength was much stronger than the small southern summer country. However, he had offended the wrong person. Dang! No one could see what had happened. The lizard man's blade slashed down on the ice crystal-like sword, but the lizard man's blade was instantly broken like tofu. These lizard men were all shocked. This blade was still a high-grade soul weapon, but it was broken upon contact. How was this possible? I want this sword too. The lizard man swept out like an eagle claw, looking like he wanted to take the sword. Chu Tian turned his wrist and the netherworld sword came out of its sheath. The lizard man did not even know what had happened before his entire arm was cut off. He gave a pitiful cry and retreated while holding his arm, but his arm was covered in blue and white netherworld flames. The flames spread quickly, and wherever they passed, the muscles rapidly withered. In just a few seconds, the flames had spread to the entire body. The originally strong man had become as thin as a stick in an instant. Finally, his body broke apart and turned into smoking fragments on the ground. The other lizard men revealed looks of fear when they saw this. They could not understand. Only the small villages around this small town knew about it, so how could a small village like this have such a powerful character? It was too late to run. Chen Bingyu waved her hand and large amounts of crystal-clear snowflakes flew out, instantly entering the lizard men's bodies. Several hundred sharp icicles appeared in these lizard men's bodies, turning them into giant ice porcupines. They did not have the slightest bit of resistance before being killed. Meng Yingying spat out at the corpses on the ground. Even this kind of fellow wants to have ideas about us? This kind of bad person, even Meng Yingying did not have the slightest bit of pity. The surrounding onlookers revealed looks of dread. Wherever the four of them went, everyone stayed far away and no one dared to approach them. If they could kill the chicken to warn the monkey and save themselves some trouble, that would be the best. But would the situation be as smooth as Chu Tian imagined? The surrounding people whispered to each other with eyes filled with schadenfreude, preparing to watch a good show. Chu Tian knew that this matter would not be this easy. But even like this, Chu Tian did not need to be afraid. He did not believe that in a small town on the edge of the forest of chaos, there was anything that could threaten him. This is considered an inn. Meng Yingying stood in an incomparably simple stone house. It was like several stone balls buried in the ground, with the surface covered in moss and vines. There were even poisonous insects like centipedes and spiders crawling through the cracks. The inside of the small stone house was not much better. Each stone house was completely sealed and did not even have a single window. There were no lamps. The lighting tools here were made from the liquid of fluorescent insects. Each stone house was less than 2 meters tall and less than 10 square meters in area. It was simply like a dog's kennel. Meng Yingying felt that instead of living in this kind of place, it would be better to set up a tent in the forest. Safety was the most important thing in the forest of chaos. Although this house was simple, it was relatively stable. What made Meng Yingying, Vivian, and the others unable to accept was that the inn's boss was an orc. Orcs were a different race from spirit beasts and there were many of them in the forest of chaos. Their typical characteristic was their green skin, incomparably tall bodies, and 2 large fangs. They were even more barbaric than the barbarians. The half-beastman boss was wearing an apron-like pants and his upper body was covered in scars. 2 short axes hung on his back, and his long hair was tied into dozens of thin braids that draped over his back. His mouth was full of a rancid stench that could make people faint from a distance of 10 feet. On the wall behind him, there were all kinds of marinated demon beast meat that had maggots growing on it. There were also bottles of unknown wine placed in a row. Do you want to stay here? The orc spoke in the spirit beast language, 1 low-grade source stone per day. So expensive. Meng Yingying's eyes popped out. 1 low-grade source stone was equivalent to 1 million gold coins. 5 million gold coins could buy a pretty good inn in southern Xia. You're definitely trying to rip us off because we're outsiders. The orc dug his large nose. Ignoring Vivian and Meng Yingying's disgust, he took out a sticky substance and smeared it on his pants. So what if I'm ripping you off? You can stay if you want. You. Yingying, forget it. Chu Tian didn't want trouble, so he took out 3 low-grade source stones, at most 3. Arrange a room for us. The orc's eyes lit up and he immediately put away the source stones. He revealed a smile, all right, come with me. This green-skinned fellow brought them to a room. Meng Yingying looked at the dirty orc and her heart began to whisper. The orcs were the most notorious race, even worse than the barbarians. Was it really safe to live in their place? After the orc boss took the money, he became much more enthusiastic. At this time, Dongfang Haoren came back. I didn't see any or being sold in the market, they are only trading local specialties. Wouldn't this be a wasted trip? And they were living in this kind of damn place. It's not strange, the refining skills of a small village are low. Even if they found high-level ore, they wouldn't be able to mine it. Even if they could mine it, they wouldn't be able to refine it. Chu Tian shook his head and said, but it's not a wasted trip. At least in this town, we can gather more information or we can find the nearest city in the forest. While they were talking, the orc boss came back. He was holding a dirty plate, enthusiastically placing it in front of them. There was a bottle of wine and several pieces of black beast meat on the plate. The boss wiped his dirty and greasy hands on his equally dirty trousers. His ugly and fierce face grinned, revealing his 2 yellow tusks. Honored guests, please have a taste. This is our Beastman Race's wine, free of charge. You will like it. He personally poured a cup and gave it to Chu Tian. Chu Tian looked at the muddy liquid in the cup and his expression became strange. The orc boss was very angry. In the orc race, refusing a friend's wine is very rude. Old brother, it's fine if you put poison in the wine. Chu Tian said with a look of disdain, can't you change it to a better wine? This is like shit, who do you expect to drink it? You want to use it to poison us? Do you really think father's brain is full of shit? The orc boss was shocked. He had bought this poison from the town's alchemist. He had promised that it was tasteless and that no one would be able to see through it. There were many guests that had been easily poisoned to death by the orc boss and then taken away all their belongings, so how could this fellow recognize it with a single glance? You dare not appreciate it. The orc boss smashed the cup and took out 2 short axes from his back. He fiercely said, I'll let you know the result of rejecting the orc's good intentions. Since the soft approach didn't work, they were going to use the hard approach. Dongfang Haoren kicked out and the orc boss was sent flying out the door. This strong. The orc boss quickly stood up, but before he could say anything, an arrow pierced through the stone wall, piercing through the orc boss' chest. Damn! Damn! Where did this arrow come from? The Beastman boss had died without knowing why. More and more arrows pierced through the walls, wildly shooting at the people in the hotel. The person shooting the arrows outside clearly wanted to kill everyone in the hotel. Chu Tian's group felt this was strange. Who the fuck was shooting arrows outside? Could this place be any more chaotic? I'll do it. Vivian suddenly cut open the space and led everyone out of the hotel. Chapter 365. Dozens of fierce bandits from different races surrounded the small inn in circles. Every single one of them held a bow in their hands and shot arrows at the inn. They were clearly not ordinary people. Every arrow contained powerful spirit energy, and that sharp power could easily pierce through a small stone house. The orc boss had been killed by the arrows. This is the result of offending us. The leader of the snake clan summoned several large fireballs and smashed them. The small inn that was riddled with holes finally exploded and collapsed. The intense flames burned the inn to ashes and under the heat, the corpses were burnt to ashes. Stop! The snake clan leader waved his hand, they should be dead. Dig out the corpses and let everyone have a look. I want to see who dares to kill my Siku's subordinates. Yes. Several bandits rushed into the ruins to extinguish the fire and immediately began to search for the corpses. Boss, there's no one here. What did you say? The snake man Siku had a stunned expression. This was impossible, they were clearly inside. Could they have evaporated into thin air? At this moment, a voice came from behind him. Hey, are you looking for us? Siku turned around and 5 people appeared behind him. They were less than 10 meters away and it seemed like they had been standing here for a long time, but Siku did not notice them at all. 4 humans and 1 elf. Weren't these the fellows that had offended him? Now they were completely unharmed and had mysteriously appeared behind him. Meng Yingying saw their appearance and said in a disgusted voice, "What kind of race are these? Why are they all so ugly?" The snake clan was not a spirit beast, rather they were an independent race. They had a snake's lower body and a human's upper body, but their skin was covered in scales. Their eyes were cold and gloomy, their voices were low and hoarse, and their tongues were forked, making them look very ugly. These fellows should be with the lizard men from before. This mob did not belong to any race and was clearly a group of bandits that ruled this place. "Damn, you dare play tricks on me." Chu Tian revealed a face of ridicule, "Play tricks on you? Are you worthy?" Scott's forked tongue retracted, his long and narrow snake eyes filled with anger. "Do you know who I am? Damn it, it's none of my business who you are." Chu Tian waved his hand impatiently. "So noisy, who can make him shut up?" Chen Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren stood up. Siku pulled out a trident, "You dare to challenge Lord Siku? You overestimate yourselves, die." Siku's 3-meter-long tail jumped up and he shot out from the ground, charging forward like a meteor. A dark green viper source spirit appeared and the surroundings were filled with a green poison fog. A poison-attributed source spirit? This kind of attribute was indeed a little difficult to deal with. However, this snake man's cultivation was only in the 7th awakened soul layer. Although he had reached the true soul realm, if he was placed in the 3 great clans, he would be considered a senior elder. He could be considered a first-class expert in the southern Xia, but meeting Chu Tian's group, he could only be considered unlucky. In the end, Chen Bingyu directly grabbed the trident. Siku revealed a sinister cold smile, seeking death. The trident released a large amount of dark green poison that instantly exploded onto Chen Bingyu's divine sense. This poison was very corrosive and could easily corrode a true soul realm cultivator's protective spirit energy. This girl dared to block this attack with her bare hands, she was no different from a dead person. Who would have thought that Chen Bingyu would not react at all? This strong corrosive poison could not corrode the starlight immortal body and could not harm Chen Bingyu at all. Instead, an extremely cold energy was released from Chen Bingyu's body. All of the poison was frozen and sealed. The ice spread along the trident to the snake race's entire body. The snake man saw that the situation was bad and immediately retreated. "Ah!" A pitiful cry rang out. Siku retreated, but with a kacha sound, both his arms were broken. His frozen arms fell to the ground along with the trident. This fellow's hands were completely crippled. Everyone was stunned. Siku was not weak, but he was easily defeated. This human girl did not even use her full strength, this meant that this human's strength far surpassed everyone's imagination. You. If you dare kill me, you'll definitely regret it." Siku retreated in fear. Dongfang Haoren's source spirit turned into a giant flaming sword. He stepped off the ground and soared into the sky, instantly appearing in front of Siku. "Wait a minute. I am the great spider Count Cannon's subordinate." He did not even finish speaking. Dongfang Haoren passed by his body. That terrifying sword glow did not cut his body in half, rather it cut a large piece of flesh and blood, leaving a deep mark on the ground. "The boss is dead. Everyone, quickly run." These wild bandits usually bullied the people of this small village. When had they ever met such a powerful person? They were so scared that they pissed their pants. Chen Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren charged forward. There was a series of pitiful cries and begging for mercy, but in just a short few seconds, everything returned to normal. If they weren't ice shards, they had already been chopped into meat paste. In short, there was not a single person left standing. Siku is dead. Siku is dead. These bandits were clearly the tyrants of this small town. When the snakeman and his subordinates were killed, the other people in the small town all revealed looks of shock. Everyone calm down, everyone calm down. Chu Tian felt good about himself and immediately raised his hands and said, "Everyone doesn't need to thank me or worship me. Eliminating evil for the people, punishing evil for the good, this is what I should do." Vivian said in a doubtful voice, "Big brother Chu Tian, they don't seem to be thanking us." How could that be? Chu Tian was a bit stunned. When he looked over everyone, not only did they not shed tears of gratitude, they all revealed looks of fear. Siku has been killed. This small town is finished, this small town is finished. Damn, where did these people come from? We built this small town with great difficulty and it was destroyed by them. Quickly leave. Canon's anger is not something we can endure. These people did not have any joy, rather they felt like a disaster was about to befall them. They looked at Chu Tian's group with eyes that did not have the slightest bit of gratitude, rather they were filled with anger and hatred. If it wasn't for the fact that they were strong, they would have already tied them up and offered them to Canon for forgiveness. What is going on? Meng Yingying scratched her head. Could it be that killing a few bad people is something wrong? What kind of logic is this? When she saw eyes filled with anger, fear, and blame, Meng Yingying felt like her three views had been turned upside down. When did killing bad people become doing bad things? Chu Tian knit his brows. These fellows did not have a normal background. The powers in the Forest of Chaos were all vassals, so these fellows could be controlled by a certain power. They could act like tyrants in this small town, and the fact that the small town was not destroyed, it was all because of this power's protection. This can't be blamed on them. Chu Tian patted Meng Yingying's shoulder. It is not easy for these low-level powers to have a small town. Many villages rely on this small town to survive. Now that the small town can't be protected, of course they hate us. Then what do? We didn't do anything wrong. Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders. Could it be that we have to swallow this humiliation after being bullied to this point? That's not my style. Don't think about it too much. There are many things in this world that can't be said right or wrong. Let's go to these fellows' nest first and see if there are any clues. It would be best if we can investigate the origins of that reptile count. I don't want to cause trouble for no reason. Who was the spider count Canon? Vivian had never heard of him before, so he shouldn't be any large character. Siku and the others were human traffickers in the Forest of Chaos before, but they met the Spider Count and were recruited as his underlings. They were the Spider Count's agents in the small town, collecting protection fees and transaction fees. Of course, most of this money had to be handed over. In a place like the Forest of Chaos, it was impossible to survive without a strong enough umbrella. The Spider Count Canon's reputation was not small, and it was his reputation that prevented the small town from being destroyed by outsiders. As Siku's agent, naturally no one dared to provoke him, so he could do whatever he wanted in the small town. Not only did he ruthlessly oppress the villagers, he also promoted the business of other human traffickers. This poor ghost doesn't have any property at all. Chu Tian searched Siku's place. There was a dungeon that had over 100 people locked up, and they were all Siku's goods. Chu Tian only found 200 low-grade source stones. This was not a small amount to normal people, but it couldn't enter Chu Tian's eyes. Open the dungeon and let everyone go. Chu Tian was not interested in human trafficking, so he opened the dungeon and let everyone go. However, at this time, there was a very special slave that caught Chu Tian's attention. This was a man that was only 1.3 meters tall, not even as tall as Vivian. However, his muscles were very well developed and his face was covered in a red beard. His age was equivalent to a 20-30-year-old human. Dwarves? Why were there dwarves here? The dwarves were famous for their refining skills. Each dwarf had an outstanding talent in refining, so the price of dwarven slaves was not low. The most important thing was that dwarves usually lived in mines. As long as he found a dwarf, wouldn't he be able to find the high-level ores Chu Tian needed? Chu Tian quickly made him stay. Dongfang Haoren held the dwarf in one hand as he walked over and threw him in front of Chu Tian. The dwarf said a bunch of things. His two little eyes were wide open like he was filled with rage. Meng Yingying did not understand the dwarf language. What is he saying? Vivian explained, the dwarves think we are bad people. They think we are human traffickers. Chu Tian explained in the dwarf language before asking about the ores. After all, buying ores was the most important thing in this trip to the Forest of Chaos. It was impossible for the dwarves not to know about ores. They relied on this to make a living. The dwarf looked at Chu Tian in doubt and asked in a heavily accented human language, "You really aren't Canon's minions? So you can speak the human language?" Meng Yingying rolled her eyes, "We don't even know who Canon is. You just need to tell us if you have ores to buy or not, we really need them." The dwarf revealed a dejected expression. The dwarves have a lot of ores in their mines, only. Only what? The dwarf revealed an angry expression. Our mines have already been taken away. Taken away? Who did it? Spider Count Canon. Alright, Chu Tian patted his forehead. This time he couldn't avoid it. But speaking of this, who was this fellow? Chapter 366. The dwarves were naturally on guard against humans. This was the same reason as the elves being on guard against humans. Humans were one of the most complicated races on the continent. Saying they were noble, of course they were not, but saying they were evil was not completely true. However, the human traffickers and hunters in the Forest of Chaos were mostly working for the humans. The humans were gradually becoming the wealthiest and most technologically advanced group on the continent. Although the human race's overall strength was weaker than the spirit beasts and elves, their future potential could already be seen. The dwarves already had nothing. Being on guard was being on guard, but there was nothing to lie about, so he said everything he could. This dwarf's full name was Tino Oldman, living in the Oldman mines 200 kilometers away. The Oldman mines had around 50,000 dwarves at its peak. After over 100 years of development, they had built a large underground palace. The dwarves' nature was somewhat similar to that of the dragon race. They had a very strong hobby of collecting precious things. However, compared to the dragon race, who were greedy for everything, the dwarves only liked mineral resources, such as precious metals, rare crystal ores, and divine weapons. Therefore, an old mine that had been operating for 100 years was no different from a treasure. This was also the source of all disasters. The dwarves followed the dark forest law, trying their best to hide themselves. However, they were different from the other races. Once the other races were exposed, they would immediately move away, but the dwarves could not give up on their mines. The Oldman mines were finally exposed, attracting countless greedy people. But the dwarves were a race of warriors. They were well equipped with powerful weapons and were very powerful in battle. Adding in the defense system they had built over 100 years, it was hard for enemies to break in. In the last 10 years, they had been attacked every now and then, but the dwarves won every time. Only after a long period of fighting, the dwarves' population had shrunk to around half of their peak population. While the dwarves were feeling tired, a powerful opponent had appeared. This guy was Canon, nicknamed the Spider Count. Canon had hired large amounts of bandits to attack from the outside, and he had the spider army dig tunnels to launch a sneak attack from the inside. After a fierce battle, the dwarves were either dead or captured alive. The entire Oldman mines had fallen, and even those that managed to escape were powerless to reverse the situation. The dwarves' 100 years of wealth had been taken by Canon, and over 1,000 dwarves had been sold as slaves to human countries. The entire Oldman dwarf clan was finished. Tino drank cup after cup of wine, his face filled with anger and resentment. Vivian was indignant. He's just a nobody that I've never heard of. How can he be so arrogant? Don't worry, dwarf brother. We'll help you get the mine back. Meng Yingying scratched her head, a bit confused. I know about spirit beasts and elves, but what are spirit insects? From the Spider Count nickname and the dwarf's description, this fellow was without a doubt a spirit insect. The Forest of Chaos did not just have a few strong powers on the surface, there were many powers that were hidden and unknown to people. The spirit insects were like this. As for how strong they were, the elves all had their own opinions and there was no conclusion for a long time. The spirit insects were very special, living in the underground world. Most of the underground cities were ruled by various spirit insects, therefore in terms of influence, the spirit insects were not inferior to the elves or spirit beasts. But because the spirit insects did not like living on the surface, they rarely clashed with the elves or spirit beasts, so it was hard to estimate the other side's strength. There were some elven elders who had expressed their opinions that the spirit insects hidden underground in the Forest of Chaos were much stronger than imagined. They were one of the most mysterious powers in the Forest of Chaos, so the elves had to take precautions. But there were some elven elders who thought that the spirit insects were similar to the spirit beasts, having many different races. There were many different spirit insects that would fight with each other and the intensity would not be inferior to the battles on the surface. Although there were a lot of them, it was nothing to worry about. No matter who was right, it was an indisputable fact that there were a large number of spirit insects in the Forest of Chaos. From Tino's description, the Spider Count cannon was very strong. Not to mention that cannon had at least 20-30,000 people under him and they were all not weak troops. No matter how strong Chu Tian's group was, if they met a battle where the numbers were not equal, they would be exhausted to death. Once their spirit energy was exhausted, it was useless no matter how high their cultivation was. We don't have enough people, how many dwarven warriors are left? Although the dwarves were not smart, they still had to be careful when it came to the whereabouts of their companions. Who knew if this fellow in front of them was Cannon's plan to eliminate the dwarves? If you don't even have basic trust, how can we help you? Human, how can I trust you? Tino coldly said, would you be this kind to help the dwarves fight? Dwarves, look. Vivian stood up and released her powerful spirit energy. A dagger filled with the aura of spatial energy appeared. If you still think that I am Cannon's subordinate, then I have nothing to say. Spirit energy strength. True spirit realm. It was a spatial attributed source spirit. True spirit realm experts were very rare, not to mention a true spirit realm expert with an innate spatial attribute. Even if Cannon had skills as high as the sky, he could not find this kind of person to work for him. Not to mention that Vivian was an elf and the elves were a race that could be trusted. The dwarves have 5,000 warriors retreat to the new mines to prepare for battle. Tino did not hesitate as he immediately stood up and said, as long as you help the dwarves take back the Oldman mines, the dwarves will agree to whatever you want. 5,000 people. This number was a bit small, but it was enough. This place was very far from southern Xia, so it was not convenient for Chu Tian to bring the army over, so he could only make do with what he had. The dwarves were brave warriors, so 5,000 people was not a weak battle force. The dwarves' gathering place was a new mine that had been developed for less than 2 years. On the surface, it looked like a cave. There were a few long rails inside, and huge black iron carts were placed on the rails. The smelting room had just been built, so it looked very simple. The 5,000 dwarves were hiding here, planning to take back the Oldman mines that belonged to the dwarves. Although they knew that fighting with the strength of 5,000 people was no different from sending themselves to death, the dwarves were a stubborn race, so they would give it a try no matter what. Tino brought back reinforcements at this time and the other dwarves were very surprised. An old dwarf chief was questioning the strength of these people. After all, whether it was the humans or elves, they all looked very young. Chu Tian felt that if he wanted to negotiate with these fellows, he had to show his strength first. Yingying, come out. Chu Tian directly said to the dwarf chief, this is the one with the lowest cultivation among us. If the old chief can harm a single hair on her head, we will help the dwarves for free. Arrogant human. The old chief disdainfully said, I am in the 8th awakened soul layer and the dwarves have a strong cultivation technique. Even a ninth awakened soul layer cultivator would not dare say they would be unharmed, so why are you this confident? This is only a bet. Chu Tian softly said, if you can't harm her, after we defeat Canon, I want half of the wealth in the dwarves' mines. Half. Every dwarf was fuming with rage and anger. This fellow was too greedy, he actually opened his mouth and asked for half. The reserves in the Oldman mines were the dwarves' collection for 100 years. Canon had only occupied the Oldman mines for half a year and most of the things had not been transported yet. This half was a shocking number. This fellow was simply asking for too much. This is very fair. Chu Tian did not feel that his price was too high. Without the help of the 5 of us, not to mention half of your 5,000 people, you would only be sending yourselves to death. The dwarves were famous for their stubborn tempers. How could they tolerate this kind of arrogance? A dwarf shouted, you want to take half with just the 5 of you, don't you think you're too greedy? It's not quantity, it's quality. The benefits and risks are equal. Chu Tian did not back down at all. No one knows if Canon has a stronger power behind him, so helping the dwarves this time is also a risk for us. Alright, I'll bet with you. The dwarf pulled out a battle hammer. This hammer was completely black and was flowing with the glow of lava, releasing a strong aura. It was clearly a soul-contracting weapon. I want to see if you can block my hammer. The might of a soul-contracting weapon was shocking. The old dwarf chief had a deep cultivation base of the 8th awakened soul layer. The most important thing was that the dwarf's cultivation technique was wild, overbearing, and strong. Even if a 9th awakened soul layer cultivator was hit by this hammer, if they didn't die, they would still be heavily injured. Meng Yingying gave a snort and her body was covered in starlight. Come at me. If I dodge even a little, it'll be your win. The old patriarch let out a low roar, and the floor under his feet cracked from the oppressive force. The huge hammer erupted with intense flames, and the air in the entire mine was boiling hot. When the hammer was swung up, the surrounding space crackled, as if a fire dragon was dancing in his hand. Meng Yingying's brows jumped up. The dwarf's strength was truly overbearing. She immediately put away her contempt and released her source spirit, which was a beautiful mirror. There was a glow coming from the mirror that covered Meng Yingying's body. Yingying's mirror source spirit had 2 abilities. The first ability was mirror imitation. As long as she was strong enough, Yingying could copy any cultivation technique or source spirit. Although it was only temporary, it gave her various abilities. The second ability was mirror reflection, which was a defensive ability. When Yingying was attacked, this source spirit's power would reflect a portion of the attack back. When the Starlight Immortal Body and the Mirror Source Spirit were used at the same time, Yingying's defensive power increased by several times. The Dwarf Chief's wild hammer slammed down on Yingying's body. With a giant explosion sound, the surrounding ground was shattered by the force. Meng Yingying only used her arms to block it, but she wasn't injured at all. What? Just as the dwarf chief's face turned pale with fright, a mountain-toppling power bounced back at him like a mountain. The dwarf chief coughed up a mouthful of blood and was sent flying into the wall, creating a large hole in it. Chief! The other dwarves were shocked. Meng Yingying had a proud look on her face. Although the starlight protecting her body was cracking, it was not broken. This old fellow was truly strong. Meng Yingying used all her strength to activate the mirror source spirit, consuming half of her spirit energy and sending him flying. The dwarves did not look down on these 5 people at all. If the weakest person had this kind of strength, then how strong was the strongest? This team of 5 people had the ability to turn defeat into victory for the dwarves. The dwarf chief was supported by his clansmen as he walked out. The dwarves agree to your request. As long as you can kill Canon and take back the mine for the dwarves, half of the wealth will belong to you. Chapter 367. 5,000 dwarves were neatly standing in the hall. When Chu Tian looked down from a high place, he couldn't even tell if they were male or female, old or young. This was because the dwarves were all tall and had the same appearance. They had rich hair and their faces were covered in beards, which was the symbol of the dwarves. Even if they were male or female, they were the same. Other than that, they were less than 1.40 meters tall, but they grew horizontally, forming a triangle of muscles. Kill cannon! Kill cannon! Take back the Oldman mines! Take back the Oldman mines! The dwarves had already put on their armor and raised their weapons as they shouted a few words. Following this, all the wine and meat in the warehouse were brought out, letting the dwarves eat and drink to their heart's content. They were prepared to cut off their means of retreat and fight to the death. The dwarves were not a race that was easy to get along with. Not only did they have a fiery temper, they were also very stubborn. Once the dwarves decided on something, even the Heavenly Emperor would find it hard to change it. So once the dwarves bore a grudge, it would be a lifelong grudge. Actually, anyone with a bit of a brain could understand that the Oldman mines could not stay any longer. Even if the dwarves took back the mines, they would not have the power to defend it. This 100-year-old mine was destined not to belong to the dwarves. How could these several thousand people defend their homeland? Would the dwarves leave? Impossible. Chu Tian understood these stubborn fellows. They knew that they would die if they stayed in the mines, so they were not willing to give the mines to others. However, this was an opportunity for Chu Tian. Chu Tian was very interested in the Oldman mines and the dwarves. This was because the dwarves that could survive were all elites of their tribes. Not to mention their battle strength, they were all experienced refining experts. Chu Tian was strictly a merchant and the benefits these dwarves could create were very large. Miracle Commerce was still lacking in refining materials and production. If he could take this chance to swallow Oldman's small town, wouldn't that make up for Miracle Commerce's shortcomings? Not bad, not bad. Swindling others, I'm the best at it. Vivian was eating her fruit when she noticed Chu Tian snickering. What are you laughing at, brother Chu Tian? He probably came up with an idea to harm people again. Meng Yingying acted as if she knew Chu Tian the best. Vivian was shocked. Brother Chu Tian is a good person. Why would he harm people? These words almost made Chen Bingyu choke. Were the fairies selectively blind? Chu Tian had destroyed the barbarians' homeland without leaving any leeway. But now, the barbarians were singing his praises and shedding tears of gratitude. In the future, they would have to risk their lives to fight for him. Speaking of which, these barbarians had been cheated badly. Dong dong dong. The dwarves beat their war drums. The clan leader personally put on his armor and led his clansmen out. Chu Tian came over and said to the four of them, "We should also go." The Oldman mine was at the end of a canyon. This canyon was very inconspicuous in the forest, and if a flying demon beast swooped down from the sky, it would be a very common terrain in the forest. There was nothing special about it at all. Who would have thought that there would be several energy veins underground that would even attract a group of dwarves? There were several canyons in this area and each canyon had many branches. Although the terrain was very common, the structure was very complex. The main entrance of the Oldman mine was just a very common mountain wall. When Chu Tian looked into the distance, he saw that the entire mountain wall was covered in vines and moss. There was even a small waterfall hanging down, but no matter how carefully he looked, he couldn't see a single trace of it. It was just like a very common place. This is the Oldman mine. This wall has a mechanism designed by the dwarves. As the dwarf chief spoke, he took out a stone key that was more than a foot long. The key's structure was very complicated, and it was inlaid with several crystals of different properties. We just need to insert the key into it, and the stone wall will automatically open. Dwarven brothers, let us kill our way in and take back our property and the mine. The dwarves wanted to charge in against a common enemy. Wait a minute. Chu Tian stopped the reckless dwarves. Cannon has several times more people than you, there is no chance of winning if you charge in. We have to fight even if we can't win. Dwarven brothers are not afraid of strong enemies. That's right, Dwarven brothers are not afraid of strong enemies. We have to kill Cannon even if we have to risk our lives. Don't be excited. Chu Tian said to the dwarves, since we are not in a rush, we should wait a bit and let us sneak in and assassinate Cannon. This way, the spider army will be in chaos and won't you have a better chance? Assassinate Cannon? The dwarf chief's face slightly changed. You can do it. Other than here, there is no other place we can go. Would I say something I couldn't do? Chu Tian first asked for a detailed map of the Oldman mine. When he looked over the environment of the Oldman mine, he couldn't help being amazed. The scale of this mine was very large. The dwarves had turned this place into a large underground palace. The Oldman mine's design was very reasonable. The entire underground palace was divided into upper, middle, and lower levels. The excavation area and the refining area were at the bottom level, with 6 large dwarven mines and several dozen craftsmen's houses. The living area and storage area were in the middle level, with over 20,000 rooms and 15 streets. The top level was the breeding, cultivation, and activity area. There were over 800 houses here, as well as a special area for growing crops. The entire mine was in the shape of an inverted trapezoid. The higher the level, the larger the space. It could hold over 100,000 people at the same time. If they could solve the problem of food and living resources, even if 200,000–300,000 people lived here, it would still be possible. How was this a mine? This was simply a small underground city. I want you to bring us in. Chu Tian gave the map to Vivian. Can you see if you can do it? Of course, there's no problem. Vivian raised her chest and confidently agreed, but she had a worry. Only I don't know the situation in the mine and I don't know where Cannon will appear. If we teleport in and appear in the middle of a large group of enemies, wouldn't that be walking right into a trap? Gee. The little fox stretched out its head. It was unknown when a large jade ball had appeared in its hand. This was not a normal jade ball, there was a pupil on it that released an indescribable might. Stop showing off. Chu Tian directly slapped the little fox's butt. Get to work. The little fox gestured a few times with its claws. You little fellow, you're actually bargaining with me again. It's been too long since I've beaten you. Are you itching for a beating? Chu Tian understood the little fox's style very well. This fellow would not do anything without benefits, so he could only agree. All right, I'll give you a portion of the benefits when the time comes. Vivian did not understand Chu Tian's pet too well, she only knew that this fellow had a bit of skill. Moreover, it was very understanding and its intelligence was higher than a normal human's. The little fox obtained a satisfied answer and began to release its divine sense while holding the divine eye. After a few seconds, the little fox opened its eyes and those sparkling eyes released a glow. It immediately jumped onto Vivian's hand and used its claws to point out a location on the map. No problem. Vivian used her spatial energy to lock onto the location and brought everyone over one by one. Bringing people to teleport used up a lot of energy and if there were too many people, even she wouldn't be able to handle it. 4 people used up a third of her spirit energy, so she didn't dare bring more people in. The last one to enter was Meng Yingying. Meng Yingying felt the scenery change and she suddenly appeared in a completely unfamiliar environment. All sides were sealed off and there was not a single light, but it was not dark at all. Rather it was very bright. Meng Yingying gently took a step forward. Hua, la, 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 this was the sound of a bunch of silver jades colliding, sounding very clear. Looking over, Meng Yingying was stunned. Because her 2 feet were stepping on a large silver river, she had accidentally kicked it and a large amount of metal was scattered. It shined with light, just like flowing water. Meng Yingying picked up a silver ingot that was silvery white and covered in a faint glow. This was clearly a kind of mithril energy metal. The entire ground was covered in this kind of metal. When she looked around, she was shocked to find that this magnificent silver river was just a small stream. There were mountains of materials all around them, with the majority of them being metal materials and most of them being level 3 and above high-level materials. This is too much. Meng Yingying excitedly said to Chu Tian, "This is what miracle commerce lacks. We'll split these materials and we can immediately make weapons." There were so many high-level metal materials here. How many storm rifles and source energy cannons could they turn into? Miracle Commerce's technology would all be developed by leaps and bounds. "Come back here for me." Chu Tian grabbed the little fox's tail and pulled it out from the mountain of treasures. "You little fellow, I finally understand why you chose this place." The little fox's mouth was filled with metal essence and it swallowed it all into its stomach, turning into a gray fog. Chu Tian felt his hands become empty as the little fox jumped several meters away. With a speed visible to the naked eye, a small mountain was swallowed into the little fox's stomach. "Little fox, why are you so disobedient?" Meng Yingying was a bit puzzled. "This is all metal, can you digest it after swallowing it?" The little fox looked at Meng Yingying with a look of disdain. "You can even ask such a stupid question. This fox does not need this scrap metal, but master needs it. This fox will first store a portion in my stomach and wait for a good price. When the time comes, I can fiercely rip off master. This bastard would tear the roof tiles if he wasn't beaten for 3 days. This damn fox was asking for a beating, it had to be properly taught a lesson. How could this little fox be caught that easily?" Chu Tian was brought everywhere by it, but he couldn't catch it at all. The treasure room's door suddenly opened. What is going on? Why is there a sound coming from inside? Several strange intelligent races walked into the treasure room. They looked like a mix of humans and spiders. Their upper bodies were similar to humans, but their lower bodies had 8 spider legs. They walked very quickly and each leg was like a steel blade. Spider race, a kind of spirit insect. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.